Hello, and welcome back. I'm trying to figure out this whole 30-second countdown thing, and I'm still working out the kinks. I hope you guys are okay with that. Welcome to Legal Bytes. If you are new here, my name is Alita. I'm a lawyer licensed in California and DC, and on this channel, we explain the law one bite at a time. So today, of course, we are talking about what a lot of people are talking about, and that is the Alec Baldwin recent interview with Rust and or sorry, not with Rust. I'm distracting myself here with monitoring the back end here, but with George Stephanapoulos. But I need to get this down. the interview.
You said interview. I think what you meant to say was self-serving redemption fest. Cry for the camera time. Softball. Just basically tell us your story. Oh, that's great. It's been really hard. It's really great. Yeah.
So
is that what we mean by interview? Then okay.
I think that is what we mean by it.
Also, I'm on civil law. What?
Yes. So we have today on civil law. And Nate the lawyer will be joining us at 11:15 Eastern time. Joshua Cornelius, thank you for the first super chat. You are the first one. And for the first time ever, you guys are going to have a chance to meet someone from my real life, my older brother and my tormentor in chief since I was born. And the reason why he isn't showing up yet is because he says that he has a surprise for either for me or for us. I'm not sure. All he said was it's a surprise. And I don't know if I'm being wise in trusting him here, but
you're definitely not.
Because he definitely has burned me before.
There's only one way to find out. Only one way to find out. Are you all ready for this?
All right. Yeah. Show us your surprise.
Oh my God. It's very Christmassy.
About this.
It matches Legal Bytes' little tag there with the Christmas, You're into the theme, man. I feel like he's honoring you.
When you said you wanted someone to be able to come on and give very, very serious comments about firearms and serious admonishments to Alec Baldwin and for all the things that he's done, oh my goodness. This is what the internet demands. This right here. Admonishments from Buddy the Elf. Alec Baldwin, how dare you? How dare you mistreat those firearms?
Oh my God.
Thank you for having me.
So,
I wish I had a Santa hat to put on,
I know.
needed a theme, but I don't have one. It's very sad for me.
Well, I figured Kurt especially would love this, especially after hearing all of his comments about Christmas music and how much he loves Christmas music and stuff like that. So I had to fill in the void.
Christmas music and I do not get along, but the rest of Christmas I'm down for. Especially, I like the lights.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
The music is it's ubiquitous. It haunts my soul.
This is great. This is great. I love it. Thanks so much, Andy.
For sure. Whatever make this somber topic very seriously. Just like this completely just covering it up with Christmas warmth and love. So that's the way you gotta do it.
Oh, that's awesome. So the reason why I asked Andy to come on is because I've been starting to add on more non-lawyers onto a lot of these live streams, and in this particular case, we've got firearms and we have film sets, and Andy has experience in both. So Andy, why don't you tell us a little bit? Actually, hold on. First, I am going to add on Nate. Hey,
Andy,
how are you?
I'm great. Andy's here. Andy, what's going on?
No. What did he do?
Santa, come back.
I was just about to ask
I haven't told you what
him.
I want yet. Have I been a good boy? Please come back.
He's always been
Try harder.
Ah, there we go.
What are you doing? What are you doing?
Sorry about that. I had an alarm go off on my phone and it just messed up everything. So hey, Nate,
I thought it was.
Merry Christmas, Nate.
Merry Christmas.
I hope I can bring you all that joy.
Awesome, brother. Sorry, I'm a little late, guys, but I just
that's okay. You're earlier than you said you would be.
Yeah, I was trying to get over here.
So Andy, explain a little bit of your credentials for anyone that doesn't know your experience with firearms and with film sets.
Yes. So aside from being an incredible jackass to Anita's, serious side, yes. So I just love how I'm going to explain who I am, and then you're just gonna just be totally distracted by this outfit. So a little about me: I was an Army officer for almost 6 years, did a deployment to Iraq. Proud graduate, U.S. Army Ranger School, and I got out, tried to pursue a creative career. So I actually have a little bit of a background in film and stuff like that, so I can kind of speak to the ins and outs of what's happening behind the set. And I'm also an entrepreneur, which is why for today I just had to share this. And by the way, did you guys know Anita is a comic book character?
I am indeed.
Yeah.
Oh shoot,
Yeah.
Andy,
Well,
do you have
I
a link
thought
to the
Army
Instagram?
Ranger was badass, but the only thing more badass than that is Army Ranger and Elf. Army Ranger Elf. Army Ranger for Santa, man. This is the greatest Army Ranger ever.
Yeah. So I'm a creative entrepreneur, by the way. I actually made a game, which is actually what I wanted to share with you today. And actually, this is a link to Anita. So this is a game I made. It actually funded on Kickstarter about 2 years ago. It's called Crypto Cartel.
Crypto Cartel. I like it.
Can we play it?
You can play it. Yeah. So
well, we can't do it right now, but
not in the live stream. But the box looks like a shipping container. Which is
nice.
Slides open like this. Yeah.
I'm trying to find
what's the game?
comic.
So the game, basically what it is you are you are, as my costume's coming undone. Oops.
Keep it appropriate.
I'm sorry. I'm setting records. First one to appear in a costume, first one to take off his clothing on a live stream. Anyways, so the game is Crypto Cartel, which, by the way, you can find on andythegamemaker.com. There's Alita's comic book character.
That looks badass.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because when I had the
You
Kickstarter
should just
campaign,
use that as your icon. That's really, really nice.
Yeah.
Thank
So back
you.
in 2018, I had a successful Kickstarter campaign, raised over $13,000 to make this game over here. Yeah, and I fortunately I got all the inventory March 2020, when the only thing anyone wanted to buy was which is why the only thing anyone wanted to buy was either toilet paper or face masks. So that's the best time to get inventory for anything. So I had one hell of a time trying to sell it, but it was able to get on Amazon, which is why if you look on Amazon, it has the Amazon's Choice label because I sold so many copies, got so many good reviews. So really happy about that. But for today, so for those of you watching, if you go to andythegamemaker.com, if you want to buy a copy, you get free shipping. If you type in the promo code LegalBytes, you get free shipping on copies of my game Crypto Cartel. So
I'll buy it.
Oh yeah,
I'm in.
All right.
Yeah.
Link to the game is in the description already, but I can put in. I didn't know about the code, so so we can definitely
LegalBytes, all one word. So
all right,
there you go.
cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Do I get a kickback on that, Andy? I mean, I think actually I need to tell people if I do.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
You do.
10%.
Okay.
10% for the redemption code.
Yeah. Some kind of okay.
Yeah.
I'm because I literally just did a video collaboration talking about FTC guidelines on exactly that kind of thing. So I'm like, ooh, let me make sure.
Yeah. If you're getting any type of fun from it, you definitely have to just let the crowd know.
Yeah.
Yep.
They are paid subscriber, not paid subscriber. What do they call it?
It's like a
paid promotion
or affiliate
promotion.
marketing. Yeah.
Yep.
So
you buy copies with LegalBytes promo code. You're supporting the program. There you go.
Perfect. There it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
I'm in sales.
Is it one word or two?
One word.
Okay. Cool. Updated. Boom.
Awesome.
It's in the description. So So anyhow, so yeah, that's my brother, everyone. Yeah, now you have a taste of what I grew up with. So let's talk a little bit of about the context of this interview. For anyone that doesn't know, back in October there was a shooting on set. They were filming the movie Rust. Alec Baldwin was apparently preparing for a scene, and he had I guess he was pulling out his revolver. It somehow, one way or another, we're not going to get into certain details just yet because we're going to get into that in the interview. But one thing led to another, and someone got shot. And that was Halyna Hutchins, the cinematographer. She died. The bullet went through her and into Joel Souza. this is, not to take away from the fun that we've been having leading up to this point. Obviously, that's a very serious thing. No, Andy, you're fine. You're fine.
Am
you
I?
keep going.
Okay.
It's hot. No, it's getting hot.
No.
Heat up inside this thing.
We're doing this.
It's like
Yep, fair
I'm
enough.
burning up here.
And also thank you for the appreciation for the responsible grifting. So anyway, but anyway, so I mean, I think all of the lawyers in the world that are looking at this interview right now are thinking, why in the world did he sit down for this interview, right? What are you guys thinking?
Oh, no, I don't think that at all. No, I think that this was well planned and well coached from beginning to end and done with very strong deliberation, because George Stephanapoulos, by way of background, was, I believe, chief of staff, if memory serves correctly, for Bill Clinton. And so he's a little bit left-leaning, shall we say. And this interview is, as we will soon see, because I've only seen the trailer, and the trailer told me everything I need to know. I've seen nothing else of this because I want that purity of experience with you. But the trailer alone told me that this is going to be a real softball, real kind of soft redemption. Whatever I did a bad thing. Oh yeah, how'd that make you feel? And how was she as a person? Oh, she's the most wonderful person. That's so sad she's gone. So I'm sure every part of this, he may not have known the questions exactly. So I'm not saying there was necessarily that level of coordination, but I think the person was picked with deliberation, and I'm sure the answers were picked in advance, even not knowing the question, because good lawyers anticipate questions. I'm sure the answers were somewhat picked with anticipation. So also, he's an actor, so that helps a lot with acting on the camera. Yeah. So there's
but
that.
I think that also helps with it with people evaluating it, though, because everybody knows that he's a very seasoned actor. So anybody that is looking at this and thinking how genuine are these emotions, people are going to be thinking about that too. Nate, what are your thoughts?
No, I'm agreeing with you guys, but I'm also, my biggest concern is that as an attorney advising a client in a criminal matter, you don't want to give the government nothing, right? You want to give them nothing. It's like you give them nothing, they got nothing, right? So you never want to give them nothing. But there's also a double-edged sword to that, because he's a public figure. So you got to understand that his grift is being himself, right? He's got to still maintain. People still got to hire him. He still got to make money. So you got that whole, I got to still make money publicly, but then I got this criminal stuff. So how do you kind of parse that? So I think you're right. If it was me, again, this is me, and if it was my client, yes, we're picking the interviewer. We want somebody left-leaning, extremely friendly. Understand they're not after my man right here, right? We're not doing this interview on Fox News. Fox News is a no-no. We want ABC, right? We want MSNBC. They love me. Number two, the questions, I want to know what topics we're going to cover, right? And the reason why, it's a criminal matter. So we're not just going to walk into an interview so I can give up, so I can incriminate myself. I need to know, are you going to ask him this question? Just for people to understand, those things are asked, right? Those things are asked. When they sit down to plan out this interview, there are certain things that you cannot ask him, right? Because this is going to be, so this is not just an interview where they're just asking any type of questions. And then the last part I want to also say is that this interview is not to save him from criminal stuff. It's to save his career. That's why he's doing it. And I think we have to understand the bias and also understand this. We're hearing it from someone who has a vested interest in the outcome. This person is a biased person. So take this interview for what it's worth.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. And I think you good, Andy?
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I know tech issues happen all the time.
Yeah.
I was in full rant there, so I know I'm like, yeah.
No, what I was gonna say though is that I just can't help but think of Alec Baldwin at the end of Team America, where he's trying to act his way out of his the situation where he's in. Not to mention, I tend to think of actors as professional liars, so it just kind of plays into what everything what you all were saying just now.
Yeah,
it's funny because people always say Nate's the cold-hearted lawyer, but hey, if I'm representing a client, if I'm representing you, you're in good hands, because I'm not going to let you go through the BS, right? We're going to make sure it's as sculpted as possible, and his $1 million lawyers are making sure he's as protected as possible. So
yeah, well, and also Alec Baldwin has a reputation. Let's face it, he has a reputation of being somebody that is quite egocentric, and to a certain extent, you could say that he may have earned that at this point in his career because he's been around for so long and he's been in so many great movies, but there is a drawback to that too, because then when people are trying to advise you and advise you in a very serious thing, there's only so much that you can do as his lawyer. Like even like if I were his lawyer, I would not want him talking to anyone. I would not want him making any kind of interviews, but you can't make them not do it. So that's the other thing here is that there's a very strong possibility too that that he may have had his lawyers try to convince him not to have this interview. And then when he was like, no, I want to do this. I want people to think of me better than what they're saying right now in the media. And then they may have said like, well, okay, let's coach you in the best way that we possibly can so that you can get through this. But there are so many risks involved in it.
His PR team has lawyers. His crisis management team has lawyers. The number of lawyers that are involved in this, I'm sure, is quite.
His lawyers got lawyers. His lawyers watching lawyers.
Got lawyers, right? Yeah. This is definitely.
And then there's us lawyers watching all those lawyers.
Yeah, that's right. Then we got 15 lawyers to try and unpack what the other 15 lawyers did.
Yeah. Exactly.
We're evenly matched.
So yes, that's a distinct possibility too. But the one of the biggest risks here is that you have someone who is still under an investigation. Like even if they may not be actively investigating what he was doing at this point, but there is an open investigation there. And what the things that he says now, any sort of statements about the theory of the case that he makes kind of nail down his legal team to that theory, because there's nothing, they can't respond to the results of the investigation. And the investigation almost definitely is watching this interview and then saying, I wonder if there's anything else that we should be looking into that we haven't already thought of. So anyhow.
I'm sure.
No, you're right. I think 110%.
Yeah. So with that, let's watch it. So it's in 3 parts. The first part is like 15 minutes long, second is 7, and I think the second one's the third one's like 9 minutes.
So you guys have you guys watched it yet? I'm assuming nobody's watched it. I've watched the whole thing. So
I watched the first 2 parts. I haven't seen the third part.
Okay. All right.
So
I only saw the clip of him crying, so that's about it. That's all I saw.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, let's see. Part 1. Okay. All right, let's do this. Can you guys oh wait, it's muted for everyone. Can you guys hear it?
Yep.
Good.
Yeah, I think you hear it now.
Thank you for doing this. You haven't said much in public since that tragedy.
You can hit the full screen and it'll do it automatically.
Oh, it'll do that. Okay.
Yeah, if you hit the
like this.
Yeah,
okay,
There you go.
Got
There's
it.
a criminal investigation. That could be a while. There's all kinds of civil litigation. And I felt there were a number of misconceptions, most of it from sources I really wouldn't concern myself about, but a couple that I did concern myself about, where there were these authoritative statements about this is what happened. The sheriff's department hasn't even released a report to the DA yet. The reason I wanted to sit down with you is because I really feel like I can't wait for that process to end in February, March. I mean, I'm not asking them to speed it up for my benefit. That's ridiculous. But I am saying that they're going to do what they need to do. And I wanted to come to talk to you to say that I would go to any lengths to undo what happened. I would go to any lengths to undo what happened.
Okay.
Don't say that too
Already.
loud.
What's that?
I said, don't say that too loud.
I mean, he said it twice, right?
Yeah.
My first thought is, okay, there's an ongoing investigation. There's civil cases that have been filed. He's giving those as reasons why he wants to talk right now, which for me as a lawyer, I'm like, those are exact reasons why not to do it. Like, why not to do this interview?
Yeah.
And then saying like, the investigation, he wants it to end. Like, it's almost as if he's trying to say like, he wants to, part of the reasoning for his interview is to speed up the investigation to make it end faster. I don't know. It might end sooner as a result of this interview if it results in charges.
How'd you like to do end in an arrest with a probable cause warrant? Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah.
Oof. Okay. Anyway, I just had those thoughts.
Incidentally, they definitely have probable cause, whatever else they don't have.
Oh yeah. Probably cause is here for sure.
Yeah.
Question.
and the one you must have asked yourself 1,000 times, how could this have happened?
Well, there's two things I want to say about that. One is that when I talk about this, my concern is that I don't sound like I'm the victim, because there is a victim.
And
There's a
you're the
woman who
shooter.
died,
He's a shooter.
and my friend got shot. He's my friend, and she was a new friend. I met her and we worked together on some of the mapping out of what we're going to do on the film, which, you know, in the movie terms, if you go make a movie with Scorsese, you and the DP don't sit down and they solicit your ideas of how to make the film. You know what I mean? In the case of Halyna, we sat down collaboratively and talked a lot about what we wanted to do in that a precious amount of time we had. But I want to make sure that I don't come across like I'm the victim, because we have two victims here. And the second thing is that all of what happened on that day leading up to this event was precipitated on one idea, and that is that Halyna and I had something profound in common. And that is, we both assumed the gun was empty. Other than
Sorry. Oh crap. How many minutes in were we?
So
But I wanted to pause it there because that was a huge.
it's a little
admission
blaming.
right there.
It's a little blaming the victim, isn't it? It's a little blaming the victim. It's like, yeah, she also assumed the gun is empty, so that's also on her for being in front of the gun that I fired.
I just,
Mhm.
I'm not a big fan of this whole. I didn't have to check the gun aspect of this. It just, when you treat, again, this is leveraging my experience in the military, having dealt with many different types of firearms along the way, throughout my career, as I went more in this Buddy the Elf costume. Like, you always want to treat the weapon like it's loaded. I mean, I'm sure that this has been, stated over and over again, even with the Rittenhouse trace with Binger, bad boy Binger pointing the rifle at, in the courthouse with the freaking finger over the trigger well. That you should always treat that thing like it's alive at all times. I'm sorry. It just
Binger.
Well, and also one of the things that he said is that we both assumed that the gun was empty. Which, if we're talking about, I mean, we're talking at least negligence already at this point. At the very least, negligence, because anyone handling any kind of a firearm and pointing it at anyone, and then manipulating it in any way to assume that it's empty is so negligent, to the point that it probably is reckless. What, Kurt and Nate, what do you guys think?
See, that really all depends. I think if it was just some gun that he picked up and started pointing it at people, then yes, you're 100% right. You treat all guns if they're loaded. But in this case, we know we have an armorer. We know we have someone who's responsible for handing me, and as we'll see later, if someone hands me a gun on a movie set and I'm an actor and they say, this gun is good, this gun's unloaded, this gun is cold, then it's hard to then say that I'm negligent in trusting the procedures that we already have in place. Now, if those procedures fail, then that's one thing. But to get me criminally culpable because somebody handed me a gun and told me that it was safe, and that person's always handed me guns, all throughout the movie set, and they've always been safe when they've handed it to me before. It's just hard for me to say that leads to automatic criminal culpability.
Well, so I guess let me take a step back, because for me, it's not just that assumption on its own, but it's in context of everything that we do know about what happened in this case. So, for example, that the armorer was not the one that handed the gun to him; that it was David Halls that handed him the gun this time, and other various details. And I'm also I have, the more that information has come out on this case, the more I've kind of come down harder on Alec Baldwin in terms of his potential culpability in this case. And I think that, his years of experience also pulls some weight in this case too, because he has been on a lot of sets that have had firearms. So
he should basically be acting like I mean, with all the experience that he has, I just can't help but, assume this idea that he should basically be an armorer in and of himself, after having worked with so many armorers, where he's like, I know what they do. I know this is what they've done in the past. I've seen their behaviors. I've seen, I mean, there's I can't help but reference this video of Will Smith that's been floating around on the internet. I'm not sure if anyone else has seen this, where like literally like within days of this whole incident occurring, It's Will Smith is there with a whole bunch of other people behind the scenes, I think, for a movie. And one of the guys picks up a gun and he like points it, and he basically like hits his hand, basically. The guy who's like picking up the pistol, and he takes it out of his hand and he like unloads it or checks to make sure that there's nothing in the chamber. Just because, and again, it just goes to show you that it's not just Alec Baldwin who has dealt with guns before. There've been several others, and people like Will Smith are able to, basically, in that moment, in that small little anecdote. Obviously, it's behind the scenes, no one's hurt, no live ammo or anything like that. But again, he's treating it very seriously in that specific video. And it's just sort of like Alec Baldwin just totally dropped his guard in this particular instance. It's just, what more can be said about that?
Yeah. Yep. Any other thoughts? Hopefully I refound.
How dare you, Alec? Sorry, I had to get the Buddy the Elf admonishment in there.
Don't come across like I'm the victim, because we have two
Okay,
victims here.
sorry.
I want to get into more detail on the day in a minute, but let's take a step back. What was it that drew you to this project in the first place, to Rust?
I'd worked on a project with Joel before.
Joel Souza, the director.
Right. He did this movie, Crown Vic, that I produced. And Joel and I stayed in touch. We're friends, and I loved Rust. He said, I want to send you this. And I read it, and I said, I love it. I love it.
Rust, a low-budget Western, tells the story of an aging outlaw on the run with his young grandson. Baldwin, the film's star, is also one of the producers.
Very excited. Very, so excited that we finally got this made, because every independent film has many false starts. And when it finally goes, you feel like a plane. When you finally get some lift under your wings, it's very, very gratifying. I am a purely creative producer. My authorities as a producer are casting and script, which are actually married to the role of being a lead actor in a film.
So you're not the kind of producer who's looking at the line item of each budget.
No. There are basically two types of producers who are really in charge of production: people that raise the money and the people who spend the money. My consultations or approvals were completely about casting and about the script.
So this is something that
First
I
of all,
think
the subtle background music that is helping set the stage it needs a comment unto itself.
Yeah, this is not an interview. This is propaganda.
Just very low, very kind of somber musical cues.
Has anyone entertained the idea that maybe Baldwin was just trying to be a little meta with this movie? An outlaw on the run. Now he's like an actor who's on the run. I mean, just taking method acting to a whole new level in this particular instance.
It's a lot of method
just
action.
going for it.
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility, because it's like, I think his character was like his character was someone whose son was in jail, and he broke him out of jail, and then they were out on the run, and he was in jail for killing someone too. So yeah, it's a very pretty
on the nose.
Yeah, exactly. So, but the bit about him being a producer. So my understanding is that there are different types of producers. Andy, and you can probably maybe
Sure.
tell us a little bit about that too, with your experience on some film sets. But different types of producers. Not all of them have a direct, I guess, impact on those line item pieces, like what George Stephanapoulos was saying. So there are some that are basically like producer only in name, essentially, and it sounds like that's what Alec Baldwin actually was in this case.
Right. It's because there's always like with film, it's a business at the end of the day. So people are going to try to do things to try to get credits for stuff like that, because they want to get, like in the PGA, for example, Producers Guild of America, Directors Guild of America, what have you. And so they'll make sort of like arrangements, in lieu of like, oh, if you don't pay me this, that's fine, but if you make me a producer as well, that'd be great as well, for example. But they also have like line producers, as they say, where people tend to be more involved in the sets of films. And so that sounds like he wasn't a line producer in this particular instance. I wouldn't imagine him to be a line producer. That tends to be more like, again, more logistically involved with the ins and outs of what's happening on the actual set itself. But there are some producers who are kind of in the background who are trying to help get resources on the back end, just to make sure things are running a bit, much more seamlessly in that regard. But yeah, I don't see him as a line producer, because that's like almost like a first AD or a second AD on these film sets.
And AD meaning assistant director.
Yes, first assistant director, second assistant director. Which, by the way, it used to be historically, not to go too much of a tangent on this, where an assistant director would basically be like a director, but now it's just more like, someone who's just helping usher around resources and just trying to make sure that from like a business perspective, things are operating very smoothly on the day-to-day basis, like making sure people are where they're supposed to be at their call times, making sure, craft food services is where it's supposed to be, you name it, just all those different resources. I don't see him as anything like that.
Yeah. Okay. We can continue on.
Don't hire anybody in the crew. I don't
Not even the cinematographer, no one.
No, but he will apprise me of what he's doing. And he'll say to me, I got Halyna Hutchins to be the DP. I said, how do you feel about that? Are you excited? I'm very excited. She's wonderful.
What did you know about Halyna Hutchins before she started working on this?
I knew nothing about her until Joel said to me, I got her. She was fantastic.
But they were friends.
Halyna Hutchins, the talent.
Interesting, because if
You said
this
they were
were to go,
friends.
yeah, well, he had said at the beginning that she was a new friend. She's a new friend of his.
Within the last week.
Yeah,
They know
exactly.
Each other.
Right, right, exactly. Yeah, it's interesting. So if this were to go to trial, they could totally bring in all kinds of different people that were involved in the hiring process, and just bring in other people to say, hey, how much was Alec Baldwin involved in the hiring of the crew? And that would be an interesting counterpoint to see for this kind of an interview. But that's one of the risks of doing an interview like this is, I mean, now I'm already thinking of ways that the prosecution could potentially cut against this. Wait, do you guys have any other thoughts or no?
I don't know. I'm even, let's say he hired everybody, because it really comes down to what was his reasonable beliefs before the shooting? What was his reasonable beliefs when he had the gun? And then what happened during that time? So it's true. He may have had more control, but I just want to see how kind of it all connects to the shooting, because that's the key point, right? What led up to the shooting, and what's his criminal liability for firing that weapon?
Yeah. Right. And the thing that for me connects it is that we're talking specifically about the hiring of the armorer in this case. So if he was directly involved in hiring her, or if he should have been involved in hiring her, so that specifically, and then also like the other things that we're talking about leading up to this that would be having to do with safety, and the interview we'll get into it, is the other safety concerns that other people had, specifically having to do with firearms. But we'll continue.
He's admitting to at least a tangential role in, it seems to me at least, admitting to a tangential role in hiring the armor, because if this was the process for hiring the director of photography, and he was in on those discussions, and he's like, well, I've got this person, what do you think about her? She's great. One would presume that a very similar discussion was had about the armor, because why not? So it might make him part of that process too. So, and he would be in a position to, for example, offer concerns about, I don't know what the conversation is, obviously, so I'm guessing in the dark. But, if it's a new person, maybe, he said, or it's someone, who has this experience, he would be in a position to say, we need someone with more experience or something like that, or express concerns or whatever. So I don't know what actually happened in reality, but there's questions that are now raised in my mind that seem plausible.
Yeah. But again, I think it all comes back to, how does this impact the criminal liability? Because let's say if he did hire the person, and the armor was incompetent, right? He hired the armor, they were incompetent, and they gave him a gun that said, "Hey, this gun is totally safe. It's not even a real gun." And handed him a gun that happened to be a real gun. I don't, even the fact that he hired that person, I don't see how that would then affect his criminal liability in that moment, right?
So so I guess less so for criminal liability and more so for civil liability. For wrongful death claims, and for negligent hiring, that kind of stuff. So
I'm not 100% sold, man. If you got negligent hiring in a person, and you're in a position to hire this person who's going to be in control of this thing, and you're taking that risk, and it might go to assumption of risk. I mean, on a negligence or recklessness standard, obviously not for intentional, but even possibly knowing, depending on how deep we want to go into this cut, but that would
still be civil in a civil suit, though, I think, Kurt.
Yeah, because you're talking about somebody.
I'm not sold on the non-impact on the criminal aspect, though.
Yeah, I just would like to, because again, she has some experience, right? She's done this before in another movie. This is a low budget movie, so you're trying to cut costs. You have an armor that
That's
is not the
exactly
best.
phrase you want as prosecutor, right? They're trying to cut costs.
Yeah,
Exactly.
of course they are trying.
Please say that. Please say that. Alec Baldwin,
That's
or
what I'm
other
saying.
producer.
They are
Please tell me
trying
that.
to
You're trying to cut costs. Oh, you're trying to cut costs. How interesting. Where were you trying to cut costs? In the armor, for example? How interesting. Wonderful information.
They are trying to cut costs, but then again, when this armorer who you're trying to cut costs hands you the gun, says it's safe, and everybody in the room thinks it's safe, it's just hard for me to say that it's criminal. It's hard for me to overcome that, to then say that he's criminal liable. I think maybe he's liable for, like you're saying, the bad hiring, but criminal liable, I just don't see him.
All right.
Okay. Well, we'll disagree about how aggressive we can be on that one. At least in the hypothetical.
We're like 2 minutes in.
I know.
Disagreement already.
Full four. All right. Let's keep watching then.
Praised by many in the industry, was a trailblazer in the field historically dominated by men.
Make sure we don't see people walking around like walking around.
Ready? Action. The Ukrainian-born cinematographer quickly gelled with Baldwin.
The people who watched The Daily said that her work was beautiful. She was someone who was loved by everyone who worked with, and liked by everyone who worked with, and admired.
Oh boy, here it comes.
They're the tears, yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll show the full thing and then I'll pause it.
I'm sorry. But admired by everybody who worked with her.
Okay. So what are your guys' thoughts on this? Everyone is going to have their own interpretation as to whether those tears are real or fake. And I know that there was a lot of talk about that in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, about Kyle's testimony on the stand. So it's an interesting conversation to have. And it's one that would be 100% put to, I mean, this is what the jury would be evaluating, right? With any kind of a witness, they're evaluating whether or not they think that a person's show of emotion is sincere. What do you guys think?
I think that
do you think these tears are real or fake?
I think the initial seed is real. The initial seed of regret, the initial seed, whether that's regret for himself or regret for her or whatever, I think the initial seed of sadness and regret and is real. And then I think he just played into it, right? Rather than try to take himself out of it, he plays into it. So he takes that and he allows it to develop and amplify. So that's what I kind of see.
I think what's so weird about this is that there's such a the range is just so nebulous, so to speak. So like obviously on one end, he legitimately killed someone, right? And it's kind of like the same thing what happened with Kyle Rittenhouse, where he legitimately killed people, right or wrong, that's going to have an emotional impact on you. And then there's how you kind of like how this plays out before you and you have to take into consideration of the person. And as I mentioned before, actors are professional liars. So at what point do we, stop seeing, the person who, killed the person, and at what point is it the actor who's, picking up the rest of the expression in this interview? It's just kind of, that's difficult to gauge off this specific, clip.
It's what it's going to come down to. Just if you're somebody who likes Alec Baldwin, who thinks that him killing someone is going to give him an emotional response, they're just a lot of people are going to think those are real tears. A lot of people who thinks that this is a show for us is going to think it's BS. I don't think these are real tears, but again, those are my own thoughts about Alec Baldwin. I've been in situations before where somebody's cried, and cops believe that it's honest, and some cops believe they're full of crap. So the tears. I understand what he's trying to do and what he's trying to put forward, but it really depends on the person whether they're going to accept this as being real or not. I just I don't buy it, but I can understand people well. Some people will. Look at Kyle Rittenhouse. There are a lot of people there. You can just watch a lot of videos of everybody thinking that was fake, and you can have a lot of videos of everybody thinking that was sincere.
Yeah, and I do agree. I don't think that these tears do not come across to me personally as sincere. For me, it's really the suddenness that they come on. That there's no like so we were talking about this when Natalie Wisco was on the channel yesterday and Emily D. Baker was on, and we were sort of talking about witnesses getting emotional on the stand. And most of the time when that does happen, you can see that there's an effort to try to keep it all in. And it's almost like this, like barrier that they're trying to hold it all in, and it just sort of crumbles. And you can see that happen within a person. That's not happening here. And it's not to say that every single time that someone starts crying that's going to happen, but this is a similar sort of situation where you have somebody who's, in a sense, testifying. It may not be in court. It's in front of a camera and in front of George Stephanapoulos. But to me, the fact that there's no like emotional buildup for him crying, it that's the thing that kind of makes me feel like it almost caught me off guard the first time that I saw it, that I was like, oh, suddenly he's crying. And then he has his head in his hands. Like, that could be someone that is trying to prepare their face to look like they're crying. That, I don't know, but those are.
I have a question for you three. So do you take into consideration, for example, how much ad revenue ABC is going to make off of this? Like off of this whole primetime interview? I mean, just the way this is propped up, in that regard, where it's like, we put him on there, I mean, I think that's definitely a piece of the puzzle.
It is an exclusive interview. So, I mean, that it is good airtime for ABC for sure, to have like his one and only exclusive interview, especially on a case where a lot of people have been talking about it.
Yeah.
But in terms of like, what that does for his culpability for, legal analysis, not so much.
Okay.
So, yeah. But anyhow, yep. Let's keep watching.
Rust's 21-day production began filming on October 6th at the Bonanza Creek Ranch, just outside Santa Fe, New Mexico. The ranch has long been a favorite location for filming Westerns.
We need a place to lay low. Things have a way of escalating out here in the West, with one thing leading to another.
The day that I flew there, they've been shooting for a week already. I come the following week on the 11th. That night of the 11th, I had dinner with Halyna and Joel. And we talked about some of the compositions I was thinking of to...
That was the first time you met?
First time I met Halyna, yeah.
What was your first impression?
When I met her, I knew she had that spark. I knew she had that flint to her, that she was going to get that day's work done and get the shots that she wanted. She was very focused.
She had a vision for the film?
She was very focused. We had a discussion about compositions of shots in which you were shooting these beautiful tableaus of the West. She had that intensity. Every day you went to work, she would say, "Good morning, how are you? How was your evening?" Boom, it was small talk, go. We weren't going to hang out and chit chat or whatever. She knew that the clock was the enemy and we have to move forward.
But isn't that
Baldwin
seems to
posts this video.
that was his reputation in Hollywood, that he was one of those people who would get very mad about his time being wasted and very agitated. Like from the reports and stuff that I've been reading, like he's always been that type of guy who's like, why do you have me here doing nothing, that type of thing.
Yeah.
You don't, and to that point, I mean, you don't fly to a set and not be worried about time. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, he's trying to obviously be to the point, and just that's when careless things happen.
And
but what struck me is, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, especially because this is also an independent film, so they only have so much money, so they have to really stretch every dollar. They've got to try to make things as quickly as possible. So they don't really have time to really sit around and hang out over a cup of coffee.
But what really struck me is that he's having conversations with the director of photography over the composition of shots, which is not something an actor would necessarily do or even normally do. The director would be talking to the director of photography about the shots. And the director of photography, sometimes, depending on the role, is, basically god of the shots, depending on who the DP is. But the idea that he personally was having this deep interaction with her about the composition of shots, and they're talking business, all business. Like, that's what he says, right? It's never personal. It's all business. We're always talking business. We're always talking composition of shots. We're always doing that. It makes me think again. I wonder if that's true for anyone else on the set. I wonder if it's true for any other positions. I wonder if it's true. And even if he didn't have those conversations with the armorer, it could be equally damning, because it goes to show that he knows to be involved. He can be involved. So if he was very involved with the armorer, it's damning, because, obviously this led to a screw up. If he's not involved with the armorer at all, it's damning, because it's like, well, I didn't care. That's part of my blazing pattern of recklessness. So either way, either way, as a prosecutor, I'm like, well, that's really interesting because that gives me another piece in my prosecutorial puzzle. Am I
All
wrong?
right. No, I think that's an interesting point that I didn't actually pick up on.
Okay,
So,
I'm going to offer something of value to the conversation.
Of course, you always do.
Yay.
All right. Any other thoughts, or should we move on?
We can move on.
Okay, cool.
Video.
I want to say I look at myself in the mirror, a reflection of this, and I'm really kind of appalled. It's appalling. We're here shooting the film. We start tomorrow, and no, I'm not playing Santa Claus. On the 12th, I had a safety.
Perfect, since Andy's wearing the elf costume.
Right on cue. You let us down, Santa. What the hell, man?
Okay, anyway, go on.
Demonstration with Hannah Reed, the armorer.
24-year-old Hannah Gutierrez Reed, seen here in photos by the DailyMail.com, was hired as the film's armorer.
I definitely trust a person with hair like that as my
The
armor.
daughter
Let
of a
me tell you
famous
what.
Hollywood armorer, Russ was only her second film in this role. She spoke to the Voices of the West podcast about working as lead armorer for her first film before Rust.
I was really nervous about it at first, and I almost didn't take the job because I wasn't sure if I was ready, but doing it, it went really smoothly.
We spent an hour and a half shooting the pistol.
I wasn't sure I was
Giving me
ready.
all her safety instructions.
Did you think she was up to?
Sorry, what was that?
No, she says I wasn't sure. I almost didn't take the job because I wasn't sure I'm ready. And I'm thinking to myself, ooh. Because it's like
That's the worst
okay,
soundbite.
you didn't take the job because you weren't sure you're ready. It turns out you weren't ready. Amazing. Criminal
she
liability
was-
factors, top.
So, but she was talking about the previous one though, right? Or was she talking about this?
Even if
guy?
she was talking about the previous one, I'll still slam her to the wall with it. Because you almost didn't take that job because you weren't really ready for it.
Yeah.
But somehow you magically came ready from that one job. I mean, that doesn't matter to me. I'll take it. I'll run with it. It's fine.
This also conflicts with what I read previously about her, which is that she had been an armorer on a previous set, but not a head armorer.
Yeah.
So she had been on costume design or something, and then she was an armorer, and then on this particular set, she was a head armorer, which is different because you are the person that's actually in charge of all the firearms. So I don't know if this is inaccurate or if the previous reporting was inaccurate. I mean, because we all know after Kyle Rittenhouse that all media reporting is always accurate, right?
Mm-hmm. And how?
I think Hollywood and their use, of guns on sets like this can be summarized. I think a really good reference is that movie with Jay Baruchel and Seth Rogen, where it was maybe the chat can help me out here, but basically it was like that apocalyptic film where things were coming to an end. And then you have at one point in the film, it's like Jonah Hill, James Franco, Seth Rogen, all of them are at James Franco's house. And then Jonah Hill's playing with James Franco's gun from that World War I film he was in. And he's pointing it. It's like a prop gun, but he's pointing it at everyone in this one scene. And I just feel like that scene just kind of summarizes everything we're dealing with right now in this particular moment. They just the carelessness around weapons is just so.
We're saying.
Yeah, this is just so egregious. It's just oh my goodness, the people that they hire. This is the end. That's the film. Thank you, chat. You've helped me out.
Yeah. Should we move on?
Yes.
Cool.
To the job?
I assume because she was there and she was hired, she was up for the job.
And nothing she did raised any red flags with you?
No.
Okay. This training course you do, what did she tell you?
She said things like, remember, this is a blank round, so you have to create the discharge yourself because there's no projectile. So if you shot the gun, you go bang. When we roll the camera, you got to go bang and have the gun snap back. You have to create that. She would give you little tips about firing, and she'd say to you, when we're done, point the gun down. When we're done, you give the gun to me or to Halls, only those two people.
Dave Halls was Rust's assistant director. Also,
So again, there's a lot of assumptions that he's making on a lot of these sets or on this particular set, assuming that somebody is good for her job, which if you're just an actor, you're free to do that. Him being a producer, obviously he's not that kind of producer, it sounds like, that would have a lot of control, or at least that's what it seems like. I don't know if more information would come out that would be opposed to exactly what he's saying, but there's a lot of this going on, right? Like, it's not me, it's this guy, it's that guy. I assume this was happening. I assume that was happening. And already it just seems like he's shifting any sort of culpability in any sort of way. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think that's problematic or not?
It doesn't surprise me. I mean, why would you want to put the blame on yourself when you can put the blame on literally everyone else?
To piggyback off something that Kurt said in the past in one of your other videos, is that you say that there's good facts and bad facts. You're not going to highlight the bad facts at all. You're going to play out the good facts in favor of Alec Baldwin. So yeah, of course he's going to say stuff like this.
Yeah.
Watch Kurt's videos. He sounds smart.
Yeah. There you go. This just goes to show that Andy is not just a fan of mine, but he's a fan of all of LawTube.
This is true.
It's true. I do see Andy's super chats on like everybody else's channels, so it's not just me that you're supporting. I love it.
How all the regular people can blend in. Just do that. just watch their videos. Just take their sound bites and just save them for later. Good facts, bad facts. I know law.
Yeah, I really look forward to that when people are taking snippets out of my stuff and saying, well, uncivil law said this, and so therefore this. And I'm like, that's, first of all, not what I said. Second of all, out of context. And third of all, you're taking it into a whole new dimensions that were not implied. So yay.
I look forward to Legal Eagle referencing uncivil law videos.
Oh, joy.
That'll be good. All right, let's continue on this.
Also known as the first AD. Seen here in this IMDb photo, he was responsible for keeping the production on schedule.
Sometimes we would be on a set that was a very, very cramped set, and they wanted people in that room on an as-needed basis. But if I'm holding the gun and they say cut, I then hand the gun to Halls if she's not there.
Yeah, why Halls, not Hannah? Some people have said that only the armorer should be handling.
No. That's inaccurate. Meaning in the protocols of the business, meaning Hannah would to hand me the gun 99% of the time. No, whatever the preponderance of the time. But when we would say cut, if Hannah was away from the set, I would hand Halls the gun.
So this is something that is an interesting distinction. Is that so? Alec is talking about who he's handing the gun to. He's saying he would either hand it to Hannah, the armorer, or to David, the assistant director. But then George asks Alec about somebody handing him the gun. You know, so was that a problem that someone else would hand you the gun? But then Alec's response is talking about handing the gun to someone else after the scene. So it's a very subtle sort of difference that the two of them are almost like talking past each other. But it almost sounds like, you know, Alec is saying that it's a normal thing for him to get the gun from somebody else and for him to hand the gun to somebody else. But he's like, no, 99% of the time she's the one handing me the gun, which still leads to the question of why.
Perhaps more to the point, for at least for me, why isn't she on set as there's guns on set? Or if not her, an assistant to her, because she works as an assistant in the previous, so why not assistant to her? Or even the prop master. I mean, why not one of these people? Why is this gun being passed around these people? Why is she not there? Mr. Producer, who's involved in the casting and hiring of these people, why isn't she there now? Is it because of the money? Were you trying to save money? Is it because of money?
Well, I would say yes, but I would also say it seems like the AD was, because they were trying to save money. So it seems like she was the main armorer, and the AD was the guy who, if she had to go to the bathroom, right? Hey, this guy is her backup, right? So that's kind of, now I do think the distinction that LegalBytes brought out is damning, right? It's the fact that, hey, we're talking about who handed you the gun, and you're talking about who you gave the gun to. Those are way two different things. But if the question is that if she got hit by a space rock or something, who would then take over? It seems like the AD was the second person, and it seems like everyone also knew that, because you'll see later, everyone was kind of accepted that both of these people were handling the guns. She was the primary, and he was the secondary.
Mike in chat wins a point for asking, did he cross state lines? Mike wins a point.
Well, I just can't help but point out the asymmetries between like his past experience working on these big budget films, right, where they have all these different resources, and not to mention the asymmetry between Alec Baldwin and this armor right here that we see. First of all, this photo that you pause, or this image that you paused on right now, it's like they're trying to almost like cast her in a negative light, where she's like, oh, look at me, how cool am I holding these 2 pistols. They could have picked any photo of this gal as an armorer, yet they chose this one. And it's almost like they're trying to help Alec Baldwin in this particular instance and give him cover. I mean, that's just an idea that comes across whenever I see this. I'm not sure what you all think about that, but I mean,
That's a good point too.
yeah, I mean, just the asymmetry between Alec Baldwin. I mean, he has. I mean, as you guys mentioned, he's got all this, PR, PR reps, helping him. He's got lawyers and lawyers who have lawyers, right? And he has all these, resources after having established him in Hollywood. Meanwhile, this gal gets, barely gets any say in this particular exclusive interview. So it's just, I don't know.
Partly because she's doing what I would argue is the responsible thing, which is not talking about it and only speaking through her counsel. And same thing with David Halls. I think David Halls apparently after this interview made a statement to ABC, it kind of in response to it, talking about whether Alec Baldwin had his finger on the trigger or not. Basically saying that David does not remember seeing his finger on the trigger or something. It still benefits David if Alec Baldwin's finger wasn't on it, right? Because it sort of points it towards a malfunction of the gun of some sort as opposed to somebody's negligence. But so there's obviously an interest in that, but even still, like it's notable that statement was made through counsel. It was not him speaking directly. But yeah, but that's a fair point. She probably didn't have any sort of choice in this photo showing up for her. So
Santa Claus has let us down again. I just have to put it out there, just once more.
All righty, you guys ready to move on?
Yep,
let's do it.
Hannah Gutierrez-Reed had a dual role on set, armorer, and she was also the assistant prop master for the film.
One of the things her attorney has said is that she was hired for 2 positions on the film and therefore was stretched in an inappropriate way. Did she raise any of those concerns with you?
No, I assume that everyone who's shooting a lower budget film is stretched, myself included. And I got no complaints from her.
What's that?
Sorry. Didn't they have complaints about safety? Like previously leading into this whole incident?
Yeah, that's going to come up. That's going to come up in the video.
Oh, it's going to come up. Okay.
Yeah, it's going to come up. Yeah. You'll hear about it.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Go ahead.
The prop department. I'm not sitting there when I'm getting dressed and ready to go do a scene saying, "Oh my God, the prop woman seemed very harried today."
Harried.
I didn't get a sense of that from any of the people on the film. The first time I heard that there was any problem with anybody in the crew of the film was when Luber said, "Well, we have some issues here."
Lane Looper, the first camera assistant, would email production managers a resignation letter later that night, citing safety concerns. Quote, "During the filming of gunfights on this job, things are often played very fast and loose. So far, there have been 2 accidental weapons discharges." He also wrote about concerns about reasonable rest and housing for local crew with long commutes to the set.
So
now, that's damning. That's damning.
That's pretty damning. You're on
notice,
man.
Because he's talking about multiple accidental firings of the guns during while on set. So that goes to, is it reasonable for Alec to be assuming that the gun is empty given the incidents that have happened before this point? Personally, I don't think so. I don't think that's very reasonable at all.
I don't know. It'll depend. It depends on the situation, because this is a gun fighting movie. So if people are handing you guns and it's like, is it his job that when someone hands him a gun and says this gun is safe, this gun is totally safe, to stop, open the gun up, check to make sure it's safe, close it back up, and then go forward? Is that what was expected? Because if that's what's expected, then yeah, you got him. But if that wasn't expected, if the person who's handing him a gun, if that was their job to make sure that gun was safe before handing it to him, then I think you don't got him.
So there's there have been multiple people that are firearms experts that have worked in that capacity on film sets, that have gone. I know of at least one that has gone on TV in multiple channels that has said that that is exactly what they're supposed to be doing, is having the actor check it before they actually go. Like, I check it in front of you, you check it in front of me. And anything less than that is unreasonable.
Okay.
You know what I find kind of troubling about in moments like this, and this kind of like translates to other things that come up in the media. I'm going to try to be like vague about this, but specifically when someone gets in trouble, they try to point the blame on one single person. And I'm not sure what I mean, forgive me because I haven't really been following this too closely, but I just can't help but wonder, who from like the leadership hierarchy of this particular film set, like how many other people are going to be responsible as well. And that's just my only other the only other question I have about this in this particular moment, where you had these other trials where it's always fallen, come down on one person, where it's like, what about these other people?
Yeah. So there are definitely ways in which the various, because there are a number of production companies that are involved in this film. And it's totally possible for multiple production companies to be brought in on some kind of charges, or at the very least civil liability, because of the systems that are in place that are meant to keep everybody safe. So if people were not following policies, they were not following industry standards, those are all reasons why there could be some kind of liability, criminal or civil, more easily civil.
Yeah, because I'm that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking civil. To even talk about civil, I think it's a misnomer, because we got civil in spades, right? Yeah. Somebody's gonna have to pay. This is obviously negligence, but but we're talking about the criminal liability specifically with Baldwin, and I think this is where it gets more dicey, because again, if there's been hundreds of shootings on this thing, right? They've been using these guns for whatever, a week or however long they've been doing it, and if every time somebody's handed him a cold gun, it's a cold gun, hand it to him, and he does his thing, and there's been no problem, and that's the procedure. And this time it was a live gun, then it's just going to say, well, he should have done something else. I understand that sounds good to say, but if their procedures in place was that didn't happen, then we can be imposing standards that weren't the standards at the time, for that were reasonable for them on that set. And I think that's what it's going to come down to. What were the standards on the set at the time? And it sounds like the standards on the set at the time was one person checks it, tells you the gun is cold, and then hands you the gun, and then you do whatever you want. Now, I'm not saying that's a good policy, but again, maybe that was their policy on the set at the time. And if he's following their policies on the set, then it's going to be hard to say that he's now criminally liable for following because the policy failed. That failed. Somebody in the chain failed.
Depends how much he was involved in setting the policy, I guess.
Maybe even that. But even that, you still didn't have the point of his intent is relying on someone else. And that's that usually breaks that causation chain. That's what we're talking about, right? What's the causation chain?
Your point is fair. Your point is fair.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. All right, let's get moving.
He quit. Now, the day before that happened, we wrapped. And he came up to me and he said, "Thank you for the position you've taken on behalf of IATSE and the union on social media." I said, "My pleasure."
This photo, posted by Halyna, showed the cast and crew in solidarity with IATSE, the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, which had been on the verge of a strike. And Alec posted this on Instagram.
And I want to say to the people in IATSE, do what you need to do. You want to go on strike? Go on strike. Because I'll tell you something about the executives. They don't give a about you. He said, because we have some...
You haven't said...
The part that kind of makes me laugh about that, dang it, I did it again. The part that kind of makes me laugh about that is he's one of the executives.
Yeah, that's exactly what made me laugh.
Yeah.
But he's also calling out his peers, supposedly, the people who help, put this together, where it's like, anyways.
Yeah.
Just
you mean the other producers?
Yeah. He's just like throwing them on the bus. Yeah, these guys who got me this film gig, yeah, screw them. Go to hell, guys.
Yeah.
but one thing too, just imagine how scary these policies are, because they are handing people guns, and the person who's handling the gun at the end is not checking the guns to see if they're safe. I don't know where in the world you would have any type of policy like that, right? It's just like, what part of the planet are they allowing you to do that? Like, everywhere that I know, if somebody's handing you a gun that can fire, you always open it up and check it.
Yeah.
It's like insane that this is like even close to being a policy.
Take
Well,
no
and
chances.
also,
Yeah.
so Crash Mondo says that for context, their procedures are known. The gun goes through 4 checks: the armorer, the AD, the guy who handed him the gun, the grip, the cameraman, since they may have some safety risk, and the actor. I don't know. I haven't seen that elsewhere, but if that's true, then I don't know if that procedure means that they should all be in the presence of each other during that procedure or what. But that would play a huge role in this as well. So yeah. Anyhow, let's continue.
They don't give a about you. He said,
Yeah.
because we have some issues here. I said, such as? And he said, my men need a better hotel room. There was no mention of safety issues.
He didn't
No
say
mention
anything
of the
about the
women
accidental
either.
He didn't-
discharges on set.
What was that, Nate?
I said no mention of the women either. His
Yeah.
man.
Oh yeah, of course.
He didn't say anything about anything other. He goes, my men need better hotel rooms. I said, well, we're leaving, we're wrapping. Will you be here tomorrow? He said, yes. Because what I was about to do, which I've done on any number of films and TV projects, was to give more of my salary back to the production to pay for X. And I was about to say to him, let me know what it would be to B&B you guys in a house that's closer to how we can address your problem. I will be happy to contribute to that. The next day they were gone.
So you had no sense from anyone on the set that people had been stretched to the point where safety was compromised?
No. I never heard one word about that. None.
Did he know about the 2 other discharges?
Yeah, that's another question.
And how? And
That's
if
the
not,
question,
how
yeah.
not?
Yeah, and it's I would be very, very curious to hear from that individual that came up to him as well, just to say, hey, so was that the extent of your conversation, or did you also talk about safety? Also, was there an element of talking about the hotel rooms that had to do with safety? Because I know that part of it, the issue, I think, from the complaint having to do with the hotels was not just like they had small hotel rooms. I think it had to do with the fact that that it was so far from set. So that may have been calling into or calling to an issue where people were maybe not getting enough sleep because of how hard they were working and how long they were having to drive in between the beginning and the end of the day. And so they may or may not have been getting enough sleep, which also has a huge issue for safety when you've got all kinds of moving pieces on a set. I don't know.
Still back with, even if the conversation was exactly as he described, which I don't believe for a minute, but even if it was, how did he not know about the other discharges? How's that even a possibility?
Yeah.
It's like, well, he didn't raise any issues with safety. It's like, well, were issues of safety raised in your mind from the 2 other discharges? You didn't know about that? How? It's like, so I don't, yeah. How? Because if he gets on the stand and says, well, I didn't know about that, again, it just goes to show his depravity, right? It goes to show. So either he does know about it and he's consciously ignoring it, going to recklessness, or somehow he doesn't know about it, showing he doesn't give a damn, which also goes to his recklessness. So either way, it's like damning.
Yeah.
Make me prosecutor. I'm ready to go. I can make it work either way.
But also, I also love this whole, well, I was about to solve it the next day, but then they didn't show up. But when we had the conversation, I never said anything about that I was going to fix it for them. All he said was, talk to me tomorrow, which, I mean, I can imagine how that conversation probably played out in person in real time, that this guy comes up and says, hey, like, that's great that you were talking about these other union guys elsewhere, but here's an issue that you can actually solve here. We have problems having to do with safety and housing. And then Alec's response is, talk to me tomorrow. That tells me I'm not interested in hearing your complaints. That doesn't say that doesn't convey to me, the listener, that Alec is like, talk to me tomorrow and we'll talk about some solutions. Or
especially in Hollywood, where let's have lunch does not mean let's have lunch.
Yeah.
So usually it means go away forever.
Yeah.
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 And not to mention, I think there's something else you have to take in consideration with this. So, like, again, going back to him being a producer, usually at the end of the day when they're done, wrapping with shooting, the critical, leaders will get together, people who are trying to work things through the issues, or work the day to day, I should say. They'll typically meet and discuss things. Even the whole crew, they'll say, hey, this is what happened, this is when we need people to be here on set the next day. There's almost always a safety brief of some sort Anytime they have, if you're going to introduce something new, for example, firearms on a day-to-day basis, there's always going to be that safety brief that they give from time to time. And I think I could definitely see them excluding Alec from those meetings where it's like his, things are just so bougie with these actors, where people are just, oh, it's because they want to be respectful to Alec and his time. They want to say, oh, no, you don't have to be there for this meeting. You can just go, and because it's kind of like you have Alec Baldwin, right, and then you have the regular people working this set, and you can't have him interacting with the regular people by no means at all. So, which is why you have these disconnects between him and this set. But anyway, that's just something to take into consideration.
Quick question, just based on what he's saying. He seems like he said he spoke. So the guy made the complaint. He then talks to the guy and says, "What's the complaint?" And the guy didn't bring up the shootings. He brought up the housing. Is that what he's saying?
That is what he's saying.
Because then because then I think it cuts both ways, because if the shootings or the accidental discharges were that serious, I'm assuming you can just speak to this guy and ask him, then why didn't he bring that up first, right? Or it may just have been just another piece of the problems, right? The real problem is this, but then we also have these accidental shootings, what I'm also concerned about. So I don't know, when they speak to the guy, hopefully he'll say, yeah, I brought up the shootings. But if he didn't, then it kind of leads him to believe that, was it as big of a problem as we're making it seem now, based on, are we seeing it differently because of the 2020 hindsight, or in that moment, did this guy actually think the shootings were a problem, or was he just adding that in to bolster getting his people better housing?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that's why it would be interesting to hear a rebuttal from that guy himself, and his recounting of that conversation.
Yeah.
So.
Can I add something? Sorry, I just realized something with my game. I totally this up. So my game, there's like black market resources, and I completely, this was absent in my mind, heading into this conversation. But there's actually an armor's resource card in this game.
Oh yeah, that's perfect, and that's actually one of the higher valuable cards.
Yeah, so in the game, by the way, for those of you who missed the introduction, so I made this game called Crypto Cartel, where basically you are competing with other cartels, if you will, by raising black market resources and trying to turn them into cryptocurrency and cash in on them and go after each other, and then eventually gain abilities from the Silk Road deck in the game.
Tool?
What's that?
Is this a recruitment tool?
Maybe, I don't know. Don't ask questions, Kurt. Gosh, I mean, my goodness.
So and also other people that are joining in and are unfamiliar with Andy the Game Maker. He is also my tormentor in chief, my big brother, known him my entire life. And he wanted to surprise us with his very first appearance by showing up as Elf, as Buddy the Elf, and I'm here for it. I love it.
His damn collar is so tight.
So and Andy has experience with firearms due to his experience as an Army officer and an Army or Ranger qualified, right?
Yep,
that's it. Yeah. So
yep.
Bob Dole just died. That's kind of sad, I guess.
Did he really? Okay,
yeah, that's what CNN says on their front page.
Yeah, CNN Bob Dole.
Because somebody super chatted that. I saw it earlier in the chat that but people in the chat will talk about like Joe Rogan dying all the time. So I wasn't sure if that was just
you definitely got to double check those things.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So one more.
He was 98 though, so
that's expected.
It's been a while. Hey Andy, remember when we met Bob Dole?
Oh yes. Do you
want to tell everybody about the famous photo that Dad took of our family? That is like my worst photo ever.
So we went, okay, so it was back in like summer of 96. That's when he was running for president up against the esteemed Bill Clinton, if you will, who is by no means in any negative limelight right now with any major court cases. As it says. But anyways, talking about the Ghislaine Maxwell court case. You guys heard of that? Yeah. Okay. Anyways.
A little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So we're in Santa Barbara that summer, and he just so happened to be campaigning through in California at the time. And sure enough, we ran into him on the street, and of course, there's like all these people. And my dad was able to snap a photo, but he took the photo so quickly We have it, and we still have the photo at my parents'
It's on
house
our
to this
Hall
day.
of Fame.
It's like
in our parents' hallway.
my mom, my brother Conrad, myself, and then LegalBytes here. And unfortunately, because LegalBytes is just so short, my dad was in a hurry. It's got like half her
Well, I
face cut
was
off.
short at the time.
Yeah. So half her face is cut off in this photo. So
Yeah.
we need a.
It's like this and up.
Yep.
Most of my face is cut off. I was very angry at my dad for that for a long time.
I think you owe it to your community to share that photo over the Christmas holiday.
I literally just texted Mom and asked her to send it to me so that I can post it on like all the social media platforms.
Yeah, we got a lot of crazy photos, like that photo of Stanley making out with our mom.
Not making out with Mom. He was kissing her on the cheek.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's get back to the to the video. But yeah, that was quite timely to talk about that.
We're in part 1 of 3 and 11 minutes through this thing. Holy God.
Oh yeah. Sorry, guys.
Rust producers told ABC News Mr. Looper's allegations around budget and safety are patently false, which is not surprising, considering his job was to be a camera operator and he had absolutely nothing to do with or knowledge of safety protocols or budgets. Safety is always the #1 priority on our films.
Okay, hang on. Shouldn't everyone have some understanding or knowledge of safety protocols? I mean, maybe not necessarily budgets, but safety protocols. Shouldn't everyone? I don't know. Am I out of line there, Andy?
Wait, one more time. What was the question?
So when you're on a film set, shouldn't everyone have some understanding or knowledge of safety protocols?
Yeah, they typically have.
Don't they literally have a safety briefing every day for the entire crew?
Yeah, exactly.
So to say that this guy is a camera operator and he therefore has no knowledge of safety protocols, to me sounds like BS.
I mean, it's sets are very busy, right? Sets are incredibly busy. There's equipment coming and going. There's heavy equipment that the people are messing with on a regular basis. I mean, just lighting alone can be a real safety issue, right? I just okay. I find this hard to believe.
Yeah, I agree. Oh my gosh, Mom already sent it to me. She sent me the Bob Dole photo. I'm gonna have to post it in a bit. Okay, but sorry.
I do also like the fact that they themselves bring in budget and then talk about safety. So they talk budget and safety or budgets, and then safety, which is just something about that juxtaposition that's like, yeah, maybe safety is not the only thing on your mind.
Yeah, I think so. Well, anyhow, I think that this is it's also a very sort of hollow response. I think to this sort of a thing that sounds like a very legitimate concern that anyone would have. I mean, it also doesn't address. I mean, okay, of course, this could be just one portion of a statement, right? Like we're seeing one paragraph. There could be more to this, but this doesn't say anything about any sort of alleged, discharges of any guns that were improper or accidental. Like it doesn't address any of that. It just says like, well, this guy he was just a camera operator, so he doesn't know what he's talking about. So, which to me just it doesn't seem like it quite rebuts the seriousness of what he was saying.
Like his responsibility might not be in place of these safety protocols, but that doesn't mean he's like unaware of it.
Exactly. Yeah. All right.
When people say cutting costs, I don't say this with any judgment or any cynicism. Spielberg wants to save money. Tom Cruise wants to save money. Everybody who makes movies has a responsibility not to be reckless and careless with the money that you're given. Those are men who make movies that cost $205 million. And I'm making movies that cost $5 million or
the question, though, is were costs being cut at the expense of safety and security?
In my opinion, no, because I did not observe any safety or security issues at all in the time I was there.
I mean, also that question and answer. So given the fact that George earlier asked him, so are you as a producer, are you responsible for any line items or blah, blah, blah? And he was like, no, I'm not responsible for any of that. If that were consistent, I would expect him to answer here, well, I didn't have anything to do with the budget. I don't know what the budget was. So I wouldn't know if the budget was being sacrificed for safety.
I don't know. I don't want to be. It's funny because like I've been listening, and I think at a point we're starting to be hypercritical of everything, and
so?
to the it's just like, all right, for like I've been on camera sets as security before, and you know, and I'll say this: not everyone knows the procedures for guns. Like if you're the camera guy, you're not really doing. You don't know the exact procedures for handling the firearm, right? Sure. Not everybody. They don't send everybody down.
Right.
To this is all the procedures for fight, right? The people who are usually handling the guns. So them saying, well, the camera guy really doesn't know. That's a pretty accurate description. But I also think on the flip end, this was a damning admission by mistake by Baldwin, because if we run the tape back, this interview back 5 minutes, remember he did hear of things on the set. That's the reason why he had the other guy come in. Remember the other guy made the letter? You're telling him about issues on the set, and now he's saying I absolutely didn't know anything was going on in the set. So this is now becoming a problem. Like, hold on, you just said you spoke to the guy about safety issues, and now you're saying you absolutely had no idea that there were safety issues while you were there. So which is true. So this is why I think this is the problem now. Did you know or didn't you know? Because you're saying two separate things.
Yeah, right. And so now we're getting into some inconsistencies. That's a really good point. Good point. All right, let's move on.
Thursday, October 21st, Baldwin posts a photo of himself in costume on Instagram. Back to in person at the office. Blimey, it's exhausting. That morning, Looper and 6 other crew members walked off the set. Filming continued with a replacement camera crew. Scene 118 in the church was slated for after lunch.
Everybody there was having a positive experience. People who are watching the show, people who are back home, you have no idea how unique an environment a motion picture set is. It's kind of, there's an instant familiarity. The amount of care, these are people who are professionals who have really good jobs in a field they love. And I looked at all these people and I see how hard they work. They're so hardworking and they're so conscientious. And you're around people and you're part of one of the great collaborative processes in the world, movie making. Everyone moving like a watch to get everything done. And when you kind of, I don't make that many movies anymore because movie making demanded that I travel and I didn't want to leave my family. All these movies I made, I stayed home. I didn't want to go. If I went away, I went away for a week. To leave my family for 4 weeks and go shoot this movie, that was a big deal. And I'm sitting on this pew. And so help me God. I sat on that pew right before they called lunch. And I said, this movie has made me love making movies again.
Stop it there. That's bullshit. Oh my God. This movie,
yeah, right.
This cheap $5 million movie has made me love making that's come on.
Also, so help me God is usually a kind of a tell.
And especially sitting on a pew, on a church pew.
You're trying to overcompensate by saying, I swear it's true, or it's,
how often do you think he goes to church?
Usually a tell.
But whatever had happened, he sat on the church pew and God said, make movies again, brother.
Yeah. And the tears coming for how hard the other workers were working.
All those regular people.
Oh, the plebs. The plebs.
The regular people.
They were all cogs in this wheel of this clock that's turning. Oh.
Yeah, that's so full of shit. He's so full of shit.
No one ever celebrates the elves, okay?
Andy, has the way that he described a movie set, has that been your experience having been on movie sets?
It just kind of plays into what I was saying earlier, where it's just like there's that disparate connection between these especially like an actor like him who's been around for a long time, where it's like, oh, I'm this actor, I'm special, and then they're like, oh no, you are special, right? You are special. We wish we want to be like you. We want to be like you. We want to be Alec Baldwin.
Yeah, and also the fact that he was like, everybody was happy to be there. Never mind the massive walk-off that happened like the day before.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
I
he
forgot
was
about
talking
that.
about
That's
everybody
true.
that was left, right? He was ignoring the people that had already left.
Actually,
I
the people
suppose- I
survived. The
suppose,
people
yeah.
survived.
The people who are fawning over him. Oh, Alec, you're still here. Yes, I am. I'm here. I'm still
I
here.
love doing movies again with you.
Yeah, exactly. So but this part just like it just seems like he's reaching for his Academy Award again and just
Oh,
trying
yeah,
to
big
trying to
time.
hold on to it right
Big
now for
time.
this performance. All right, let's keep moving.
I used to love to make movies. I did.
Oh.
You know, I
Oh.
worked with people
There's
once.
more.
Do it, Alec.
I was going to do the movie The Edge. And they called me and said they got Tony Hopkins to do the film. What are you making it? Yeah, look, if we're here. And I started sobbing. I just started sobbing because I thought, oh, God, I'm going to have a chance to work with this guy. Any chance you can go easy on me? When they cast me in It's Complicated with Meryl, I thought, I'm going to get to go make a movie with her.
Wasn't that also like, didn't that also not have good ratings?
You know,
I believe so.
you know, people, they have their dreams. No matter how old you are, you have your dreams of people you want to work with. And this movie made me love making movies again. I really thought we were onto something.
Next,
She goes down. I thought to myself,
All right, so next is going to be part 2. So they're going to preview part 2.
Oh,
but
they
I'll-
teased the shit out of it too. Next,
They really
Put
do.
down.
They really do.
Ah, we need to see it. We need to see it.
I know.
The music, the softball
Well,
questions.
I'll say this: the first part of his interview is all bullshit, right? He's just setting him up as he's like, I'm not the victim, but at the end he is the victim, right? I am the victim. I'm a victim of this
We
incompetence.
all have
all that
dreams.
bullshit,
We all
right?
have dreams of making it big. I can think of exactly one person who probably had dreams.
I was living my dream of making
One specific
movies.
person who had dreams.
Well, here's a question for you.
Oh, he's
I've
sounds
heard
really good.
so there was
Sounds
I
great.
wanted to look into this a little more before jumping on this this session today. And one of the things I encountered was the fact that there's some people who think he intentionally did it. To Halyna Hutchins. Have you come across that information at all? I mean, like, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't see anything that says that he intentionally did it. I mean, there's been no information about like him like, you know, getting into some sort of an argument with her or any sort of frustration or anything like that. So that if there's no evidence for it, I wouldn't assume that into being, especially in a case like this where there's already a lot to look at.
Okay. All right.
So yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. You guys want to get to part 2? So we're
Please.
actually like halfway through the interview about.
Excellent. Let's
So-
go.
Yeah. All right.
Part 2 will be even better than part 1.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
The Godfather.
Yeah. We'll get into the actual gun itself.
it was the 12th day of their 21-day shoot.
that day I did exactly what I've done every day on that movie.
Baldwin was preparing for his next scene, a shootout inside this wooden church.
Set the scene right before that happened. You're sitting in a pew in the church.
Right.
What's the scene supposed to be?
The scene is the two guys are there who have got me, cornered, and they think I'm shot pretty bad, and I'm kind of wilting, and they have a gun, and the sound outside distracts them, and I would draw the gun cross-draw out of my holster, pull the gun up like that, and start to cock the pistol cut. I'm handed a gun, and someone declares, they said, "This is a cold gun."
Dave Hall.
Interesting that he says someone declares that this is a cold gun. That was something that Rick Hogue pointed out, which I thought was really interesting, that he says, like, he doesn't even say who it is. I mean, we all know it's, or at least what has been reported is that David Halls is the one that handed it to him. But the fact that he says someone handed me a gun, I don't know, and said that it's a cold gun. Anyway,
I blacked out.
Yeah,
Also,
exactly.
the first AD, in my years on the sets of film, hot gun meant that there was a charge in there, and cold gun meant there was nothing in there. When he's saying this is a cold gun, what he's saying to everybody on the set is, you can relax. The gun is empty.
That's what cold gun means.
Well, cold gun means there's no charge in there. There could be dummy rounds.
A dummy round look.
So he kind of contradicts himself there.
Yeah.
Where he says first he says it means it's empty. Then he says, well, there could be a dummy round.
Yep.
But the thing is that gun's not going to kill anybody, right? If it's a cold gun, that gun is supposedly safe, right? It's safe to point at people, right?
Which that is the point of declaring something as a cold gun. And the thing is that, like, for a legal analysis here, what we really want is details on what exactly happened right before. And he really kind of glosses over it first by saying someone handed me the gun, and then just saying, like, yeah, they told me it was cold and I just knew that I could relax.
Then because George asked name and he says first AD, which I also thought was kind of interesting. He didn't want to use the name, which I thought was just notable.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point. But again, if now there are many witnesses to this, right? This is not like he's just saying this and he was in a room alone and he's the only one out alive. So everybody else, the camera crew, everybody else saw this, witnessed this happen. I'm assuming they're going to testify to this. The AD handed him the gun and said it's a cold gun, right? And we all know what is, and then they're going to ask everybody, what does cold gun mean? And everybody in that room is going to say, cold gun means that this was a safe gun, right? This gun was not loaded and killed people. So now I don't see if what he's saying is true. I just don't see criminal liability. If this was common knowledge, number one, if this is happened all the time, everybody understood what it meant, and everybody understood this gun was then I don't see how you get criminal liability here.
It goes a long way to helping the defense case, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, unless it was commonly understood that it should be the armorer that is handing him the gun, and that he should know that certain checks
to check it himself.
Yeah,
if that was part of the procedures, you got him. But right now, it doesn't seem like that is because everybody on that set, when he said hand him a cold gun, if they talk to everybody and they say cold gun meant this and they did it like this all the time, then that seems to be what it was. I know people are probably going to say, well, that's generally not gun safety in general. No, hell no, right? Somebody hands you a gun, you check it, right? You treat every gun even if the person said this gun is empty, I'm still going to check it because you're taught every gun you treat as if it was it's loaded with live ammo. But that may not be their procedure on a movie set where you got fake guns and real guns. You got somebody who's responsible for telling you the difference, right? That may not be it there. So people can't impose their gun safety things on other places to this movie set where the principles may be a little different. So
the question with that though is whether or not that Hollywood sets should be allowed to have that lower standard than most other people. And I think that's something that a lot of people are kind of upset about. The possibility is that there is a possibility that Hollywood can be treated with a lower standard than what everybody else normally has to do, since it is a real gun. Andy, sorry, I cut you off.
No, so I was going to ask you all just to see what you thought about this. So if they're not, for example, they have a specific standard, with handing people guns, and I guess, for prop guns, if you will, and if they're not consistently adhering to that standard, and Alec Baldwin knows this, day in, day out, well, day one they did this, but then day 5, whatever, they did this, and it wasn't very consistent. Is that where he starts to fall into some more perilous territory with his case?
Yeah, because what you would do is you try to see, well, what's the standard of conduct that they should have been following, right? So, like if the policy was, if someone hands you a gun, no matter in what situation, right? If somebody hands you a gun, that's how it was with us, right? If somebody hands you a gun, you always check it. If you don't check it, it's on you, right?
Yep.
So any sane, rational person in the chat, anyway, if somebody's telling you something different, it's wrong. If anyone hands you a gun and you do not check that gun and they shoot somebody, you are responsible in all of the situations, right? In this situation, I don't know what in a movie set where you have real guns, fake guns, and prop guns, if someone's responsible, their responsibility is to delve out. Here's the real guns with ammo. Here's the fake guns with no ammo. Here's the prop guns that are safe. And someone hands you a prop gun and says it's safe. Now I'm talking about what's the criminal liability of me trusting what that person's telling me is true. And what's the policy that we've always been following? And now he's making it seem like the policy has always been this. And if that's the case, that's what it's saying. It's hard for me to get criminal liability if everyone is doing the same thing, if everybody believed it was safe.
Right.
Yep.
So, but it'll be interesting to see to see whether or not, because I mean, obviously the criminal code itself doesn't contemplate any film sets or industry standards, it seems like. So it'll be interesting to see if the prosecutor thinks otherwise.
I'm sorry, I was interrupting you again. We can press
No,
on.
it's okay. What were you saying, Kurt?
I don't even remember anymore. I just felt bad because I was interrupting you again.
No, it's okay.
He recognized he was mansplaining. He was like,
No.
"I need to stop mansplaining right now."
See the way it is, Alina.
Just-
Like this.
Let me tell
See,
you
we have
about
this
the
thing
criminal
called law.
code.
You have this thing called the criminal code, and the civil, what they do in civil law doesn't speak to this to the criminal code, so it's totally irrelevant. I didn't know if you knew that.
But we should understand though the standard is what a reasonable what a reasonable person would believe in that situation. Because there's no universal gun safety law, and I think in this context, right, everything is kind of different, and there are some legal things that you have to do there. And I'm not sure what they are, but generally, it's what a reasonable person in Alec's position would have thought at that time. So,
yeah, that's fair. All right, let's see what else, because this part gets juicy.
Looks like a real bullet.
Like Juicy Smollett. Sorry,
Juicy Smollett.
What up?
But is completely inert. It contains no explosive charge.
And you were rehearsing that scene. Was it an actual rehearsal? There's some disagreement about that, whether it was a formal rehearsal at that time.
This is a marking rehearsal where I'm going to show her. She's standing next to the camera. She's like this. You're me. She's got a monitor here. The camera is here filming that way. She takes a monitor that is his monitor, the operator, and turns it toward her. It swivels. And she says to me, hold the gun lower. Go to your right. Okay, right there. All right, do that. Now show it a little bit lower. And she's getting me to position the gun. Everything is in her direction. She's guiding me through how she wants me to hold the gun for this angle. And I draw the gun out and I find a mark. I draw the gun out, I find a cut. And what's really urgent is the gun wasn't meant to be fired in that angle.
So if you're shooting directly into the camera lens, you're not aiming.
I'm not shooting into the camera lens. I'm shooting just off.
Just off.
Right, in her direction. I'm holding the gun where she told me to hold it, which ended up being aimed right in below her armpit, was what I was told. I don't know. This was a completely incidental shot, an angle that may not have ended up in the film at all. But we kept doing this. So then I said to her, now in this scene, I'm going to cock the gun. And I said, do you want to see that? And she said, yes. So I take the gun and I start to cock the gun. I'm not going to pull the trigger. I said, do you see that? She goes, well, just cheat it down and tilt it down a little bit like that. And I cock the gun. I go, can you see that? Can you see that? Can you see that? And she says, and then I let go of the hammer of the gun and the gun goes off.
Uh-oh.
I let go of the hammer of the gun and the gun goes off.
At the moment. The decisive
That was the
moment
moment the gun went off. Yeah, that was the moment the gun went off.
Well, at least
Ruh-roh.
it's no longer just a spooky ghost. At least he admits to manually operating the hammer, so you know.
Which is quite an admission.
Yeah, and if you've ever seen, even if you've seen a Western and you've seen someone decock it, you'll see them kind of slowly do it, right? It's a very controlled movement. Their finger is on the hammer and they're bringing it forward with their finger on the hammer. Because here's how the gun fires, right? The gun fires by the hammer coming all the way back. You pull the trigger and the hammer comes forward in an uncontrolled manner. The firing pin hits the primer, bullet goes off, right? That's how it works. So if you bring the hammer back and you let it go, you're doing the exact same thing you would do if the trigger pulls. Now, it's possible, of course, that you're not far enough back, that there will be enough force to drive the firing pin and hit the thing. So it's possible that it's not far enough back. But if you pull that thing far enough back, man, you have just done the same exact thing a trigger did. So if he decocked it by just letting his finger off the hammer, well, bad times had by all.
Yeah.
Well, so one of the things is that people have sent me through Twitter and elsewhere a number of explanation videos on this type of a pistol and how people have demonstrated that, but for some sort of a malfunction, that's not how this kind of a pistol works. In order to let the hammer
It's very deliberate.
In order to let the hammer go, for it to create that much force, or for it to actually hit the point of contact to actually send the bullet, you have to be pulling the trigger. Either that you already have your finger on the trigger, or you pull it at that moment and then it shoots.
So you can have negligent discharges, by the way, in ways that are rather bizarre. So like I actually have, at least one experience related to that, but that's very the context or the way it happened was because the weapon was like really old. So when I was at Ranger School, up in Dahlonega, Georgia, I had a buddy of mine who had an M16 with an M203 attachment as a grenade launcher. And the weapons that they give you at Ranger School are just so old, and not old, but like you have to consistently clean them because they go through like every and any possible I guess environmental change that you could think of. Like for example, these weapons will sometimes go down to down to the swamps in Georgia for Eglin Air Force Base. That's for like the third phase of Ranger School. So these things get very dirty very easily over time. And so a buddy of mine, while he's going through the mountain phase, he slung the rifle over his shoulder. And this is with a blank round, mind you. And as soon as he like slung it over, because of the way that the spring is loaded in the buttstock of the rifle, which this never really happens unless you have like a really, really old weapon. But again, there's mechanics that kind of enable this to happen. Fired off a round that's completely separate than what the weapon that he had with the old school revolver with a hammer, where it's again like you can't it's very deliberate. There's a lot of weight to be able to pull it back and be able to put those things in motion, which are completely different. So. And yes, and I've never made any weapons like that one. While toy guns while in the North Pole as well. So,
well, here's a comment from Ryan 432. Impossible. 1873 Colt has a safety notch to catch the hammer. Ooh, okay. And
well, I would quibble with impossible.
Right.
Yes, you're correct that there is a safety notch which is designed specifically so that when the hammer comes to a specific place, it can't come forward because the idea is beyond that place it would cause the primer to fire. But once the hammer comes back, it's unlikely, but I wouldn't go so far as to say impossible.
Yeah, and Bill Potter says he's lying. The hammer will not drop without the trigger pulled. It's designed to prevent the hammer from falling past half cock without pulling the trigger.
Yeah, I don't. If you're just before half and you let that thing fly forward, I'm not saying it's the most likely outcome, but to say it's impossible, I'm going to quibble with.
Yeah, which the last super shot didn't say it was impossible, but yeah. So that's.
But there are also witnesses here who saw this, right? There's a room. This is happening in a room full of people.
Yeah.
So if he's saying he's the only one saying this, then that's one thing. But if everybody else says, yeah, he was pulling the trigger back, and then all of a sudden it happens, then I think it gives more credence to what he's saying. So I'm not sure if what he's saying is true, but with a room full of people, I'm assuming other people saw what was going on.
Could be. I mean, it could also be a room full of people that are doing other things also, right? Because as has been mentioned already, a movie set is a very busy place, so they also could have been messing with lighting and sound and all this kind of stuff. So it even if people were there, whether or not somebody saw that level of detail is another question.
Because
Jason points out the cylinder hasn't revolved enough before 3/4 cocked. I mean, that's obviously true. The cylinder won't revolve, but it doesn't matter if there's a bullet in the cylinder already, right? So yes, if you pull the hammer back, it'll cause the thing to revolve to the next round. But if there's a live round in the cylinder, and you bring it and you fire it forward, So yeah, you're correct. Yeah. It just doesn't speak to the issue in my mind.
And isn't he talking about because when they showed her doing the other ones, isn't it? He was saying that they were deliberately pulling it back slowly, right? So that's what they were trying to get. The shot was. It wasn't just him, holding the gun. It was him pulling this hammer back slowly. So that was the shot they were trying to get. That's what I'm saying. I think most people, that's the cameraman already, because that's the shot they were trying to get. So if you're looking at the shot, trying to see him pulling it back, then I'm assuming there's going to be people here who are looking at that particular shot to see if he's doing what he needs to do, right?
Yeah. So MeFlower66 says, I have a 1908 38 revolver that when you release the hammer, it fires. I don't know about this style, but I'm just saying. So I guess
it's also possible. It might not have a safety catch. I mean,
yeah. So yeah, these are all very good points. And Holmes is now here for the conversation. All right, so let's keep watching.
It wasn't in the script for the trigger to be pulled.
Well, the trigger wasn't pulled. I didn't pull the trigger.
So you never pulled the trigger?
No. I would never point a gun at anyone and pull a trigger at them. Never. That was the training that I had. You don't point a gun at me and pull the trigger. On day one of my instruction in this business, people said to me, never take a gun and go click, 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 because even though it's incremental, you damage the firing pin on the gun if you do that. Don't do that.
That's true.
Yeah. Oh, Nate, you're muted.
Oh no, I was just agreeing. That's true. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
he's proving he knows how weapons work. He's proving he's very safety conscious. So I don't know if this is actually helping his case, to be perfectly honest.
That's good. That's true. I was thinking about that too.
Yeah.
I'm like, damn, if you're that safe, then what the hell are you
why wouldn't you also check to see if there's a live round in the chamber?
How many sets have you been on, Mr. Baldwin, when you have to touch a gun? How many safety lectures have you had regarding guns on your various movie sets?
You have how much
so forth
experience?
and so on.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right, let's continue.
And Hall's attorney told ABC News that he was watching and agrees that Alec did not pull the trigger and that his finger was outside the trigger guard.
Okay. So you have this cold 45. You just pulled.
The AD even agreed.
The hammer is far.
Sorry, what was that?
So the AD who they're blaming gave him the hot gun. The AD's now said that he didn't pull the trigger, and that so it's I understand there's going to be a lot of people saying this is all BS, but now how far do we go with this? We got a live witness, the witness who they're blaming, right? He's saying that he didn't pull the trigger.
But who also has an interest in this being some freak accident that the gun just went off on its own?
Very true.
Yeah, that's very true. But then it's going to be hard to overcome that then, because you can say, even though we can say that, it's hard for him to say, yeah, I was there, I watched it, and now with this story coming out, there's other people there, so let's see. But I think that's plus for Team Baldwin.
It's definitely a plus. We don't deny that.
But I was doing a couple things at the same time. So did he say I saw that his finger was not on the trigger, or did he say I did not see his finger on the trigger? Because those are two different statements.
I'm not sure which he said, and I'm not sure which the actual underlying statement really was either.
Okay, let's see. I guess that's probably good.
Not pull the trigger.
Oh, wait. Okay, here.
It's the firing pin on the gun if you do that. Don't do that.
And Hall's attorney told ABC News that he was watching and agrees that Alec did not pull the trigger and that his finger was outside the trigger guard.
Okay. So that's more of an affirmative statement.
Very, very, very clear. All right. It seems very, very clear.
Yeah.
Run in defense.
All right.
He does have motive to potentially lie. So, but we'll take it for whatever value it has.
Yeah.
So you have this cold 45. You just pulled
the hammer as far back as I could without cocking the actual.
And you're holding on to the hammer.
I'm holding it. I'm just showing. I go, how about
the hammer back as far back as I could without actually cocking it. That's what he just said. As far back as I could without actually cocking it. So you went to the actual limit, man. You went to the limit, and then you let that hammer go free, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not great.
All right.
Do you see that? Do you see that? She goes, yeah, that's good. I let go of the hammer. Bang, the gun goes off. Everyone is horrified. They're shocked. It's loud. They don't have their earplugs in. No one was. The gun was supposed to be empty. I was told I was handed an empty gun. If there were cosmetic rounds, nothing with a charge at all, a flash round, nothing. She goes down. I thought to myself, did she faint? The notion that there was a live round in that gun did not dawn on me till probably 45 minutes to an hour later.
45 minutes to an hour.
Well, she's laying there and I go, did she get it by wadding? Was there a blank? Sometimes those blank rounds have a wadding inside that packs, it's like a cloth that packs the gunpowder. And sometimes wadding comes out and can hit people and it can feel like a little bit of a poke. But no one could understand. Did she have a heart attack?
There were statements that have been made to the public about that apparently she said, and I don't know if this was verified or not, but apparently she said, I can't feel my legs. So that would not fit with her fainting or having a heart attack. So the fact that he's like, not until 45 minutes later did I know that she was shot.
Also, just by way, do you not have any kind of medical at all on site so someone can come over and like try to see what's going on and maybe inspect and be like, geez, she seems to be being bleeding pretty hard from what seems to be a wound of some kind.
Yeah.
Wonder what could have happened here.
She fainted.
Not my problem.
If you really didn't think about it for 45 minutes, that suggests very strongly to my mind that there wasn't medics for 45 minutes. Why isn't there someone on set to provide medic just for basic medical?
He's like, Alec Baldwin was like, I'm not used to working with so few regular people on a set like this.
Salt of the earth people.
There's typically more people who want to be there. People were so happy to be there. Like,
Yeah.
I want to see
oh
this
my
45
goodness.
minutes. Like, he's got to have some excuse for 45 minutes because that's ridiculous. She's
Yeah.
shot. Not
Yeah.
Also, the other guy was shot.
Two people were shot.
He's
The
in
other guy
the
was
same
shot.
room
And so,
as
like,
her.
did she faint? How about the other guys? Be like,
Yeah.
hey, geez, I seem to have a wound here of some variety.
Sherry,
Well,
he's
and
like
also-
right in
fainted
front
at
of
the
her.
same time.
I would like to see a timeline within that 45 minutes of when somebody called 911, because obviously someone knew that she was shot because it's on the 911 call, which they will play. So actually that's probably like next.
45
Because
minutes.
remember,
bullshit.
the idea that someone put a live bullet in the gun was not even in reality.
Did you go up to her? Or did you
I
back
went
away?
up to her and then we were immediately told to get out of the building. We were forced to get out of the building. The medics came in. I mean, I stood over her for 60 seconds and she just lay there kind of in shock.
Was she conscious?
My recollection is yes.
Wait, sorry, what was that, Nate?
No, so that makes it all right. So if someone's shot and you go and you say what happened and they have the medics rush you out, he says he's only in for like 15, 20 seconds. He meant, the bleeding may not have started immediately.
That's true.
So
That's fair. But I mean, if I'm not Alec Baldwin, but I know that if it were me, I would be standing right outside there asking, does anybody know what's going on? Does anybody know what's wrong with her?
yeah.
You're trying to get as much information and not taking 45 minutes to do it. Let me get a couple super chats because there's one question here. In KR, a lot of evidence wasn't let in to avoid bias. Could Alec as a defendant be kept anonymous to avoid juror bias against convicting a celebrity? I don't think so.
No. In fact, the defense would almost certainly want that information because exactly for that reason. It's like if
For
you
the
pick the
celebrity.
jury blind. So just imagine this: like you pick a jury blind, and then suddenly, oh, it's Alec Baldwin, and now you don't have any information about how that jury is going to respond to that fact. I think you definitely want that in as part of the vetting and voir dire process. I can't imagine you want it excluded.
Yeah. And also earlier there was a question for Andy. How can, and this is from Philip Frakowitz. They said, how can someone ensure a gun is loaded with blanks, and how is live ammo different from a blank? Asking because not an expert.
Well, typically it's like the weight of it. You can see with blank rounds, from what I remember, so there's a typical the actual round extends from the actual casing of the round, the ammo itself, versus it's typically like almost like serrated off in a way. It looks a little bit flatter typically, and that's typically what you'll find with these blank rounds.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
You'll basically see the round. That's why they call it a round, because it's like off the front end of the casing.
Interesting. Okay. Theophrastus 3.0 says Google single action revolver transfer bar, a modern gizmo for single action guns that adds safety, internal/invisible, irresponsible not to have it. Jim Satala says these types are usually only loaded with 5 and left on an empty cylinder because the firing pin rests on a primer and pushing the hammer can cause a fire. Do you guys agree with that?
Yep.
Okay. If the script didn't call for pulling the trigger, then why were there any rounds, blanks, or reel loaded in the firearm?
Especially for a marking shot, because the only thing you're trying to determine is like the gun angle, right? You're not because
eye line is what they do. Yeah.
Greg Lovelace says all I know for sure is his speech. He tells clearly he's distancing himself from this and wants to build a huge wall between the involvement. I mean, that would be for anybody, whether they actually have any culpability in this kind of a case, right? Anyone would want to be doing that. The question is whether or not he's doing that effectively and in such a way that's not going to bring new risk to him. So, all right, let's continue on.
911, what's the location of your emergency? We need an ambulance out at Bonanza Creek Ranch right now. We've got 2 people shot on a movie set accidentally. I'll connect you with medical dispatcher. Don't hang up.
Director Joel Souza is also wounded. His shoulder hit by the same bullet that traveled through Halyna.
When she went down, he went down, and he was screaming really loudly. And I thought, What is he screaming? What happened?
So was it loaded with a...
Did he have a heart attack too?
No, I do want to say this is where I don't believe him, right? There's no way you hear a lot, you pull up hammer back, boom, right? Two things happen. Number one, you're going to get some blowback, right? That gun's going to move, right? If it's nothing in the gun, or if it's you're going to get that blowback. So something's happened with the gun. You see the first person go down and somebody goes down behind them screaming, and you're going to be like, what happened? Did they both? It's like, no, obviously they got shot. So, this is total BS, right? I think he's got to be honest here and just say any reasonable idiot would have known. Two people just went down. You know what I'm saying? Like, come on, really?
They both fainted. My goodness, what's going on here?
Yeah. Is there a carbon monoxide leak? What's going on?
He's outside. Like,
He must be COVID.
People just fainted.
I've just been shot. What could have happened to him?
These
Dr.
blank rounds
Spoon.
are crazy.
I didn't know what happened for 45 minutes.
Dr. Spoon says could always try to get Hickok 45 to comment on the specs of the gun that was used, since he has decades of knowledge of
45 is
firearms.
pretty cool. I watch his stuff sometimes. I don't know. If
I've
come on
never
Lawyer
seen
Land,
his
but,
stuff, but that would be interesting.
He's a firearms enthusiast. He has a place in Tennessee in a backyard with a nice little range, and he takes all kinds of firearms and shoots them at all kinds of distances. And yeah, he's an interesting kind of character, kind of grandpa-like.
That's awesome. And Brian Hoffman, thank you for your super chat too. All right, let's continue.
Real bullet or one? I cannot tell you that. Okay. We have 2 injuries from a movie gun shot. Okay, we're getting them out there already. Just stay on the phone with me. Okay.
Now,
Within 15 minutes or 20 minutes after that, the police arrived.
Hang on.
And
What was that, Nate?
Now again, too, just the reason why I don't believe anything he's saying now, and I'm just going to be honest with you, is the fact of the matter is he's one of the top people on this set, right? He's got the money, he's one of the producers, and he's one of the people, like, the top people where we need to know everything serious that happened. He's just shot 2 people, and he's saying he doesn't know any of this. Nobody told him, like, hey, they're shot. Until 45 minutes later, this just doesn't make any sense. He would be one of the first people to know, right? Your brothers worked on movie sets. Wouldn't the top people know that, one of the producers just shot somebody? Wouldn't that be one of the things that go out really fast?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a critical safety issue. I mean, they got to act quickly. They have to have a plan in place in order to respond effectively.
Yeah, that's a very good point too. Like how would you would think that anything that would impact the production in a major way, they would want to tell the producer first. Like the producer that is nearby, that is close by, that is maybe even involved in the scene, maybe get him up to speed on exactly what's been going on.
One of the things that they do for each day of filming is they typically will provide you with a map of where to go and where to set up. And one of the things that they'll typically provide you with is a hospital in the event someone gets injured. So these things are thought out on a regular basis. I mean, people have to have a plan in place when they go on a set like this. I highly doubt Alec Baldwin would go work for any movie set, any movie production that doesn't have something like that already thought out. So
yeah.
begs the question.
Mike the Dad Crosby says, I have a short YouTube video on wheel guns, 6 guns, that talks about the hammer. These guns usually have 2 stops when you pull the hammer back. First stop locks the hammer halfway back and locks the trigger. Second stop allows the trigger to fire. Interesting. Huh. We'll have to check out the video that you made on that.
Hey, Anita, I have a hard stop here. So
okay.
Yeah,
you got to get going now.
I gotta roll. But thank you so much. And if I could just do one last plug. So again, one of the things I mentioned here. So I made a game called Crypto Cartel. I had a successful Kickstarter campaign, but it was also because Anita helped contribute to that campaign back in 2018, where she, for all of you watching, she contributed to that campaign. And one of the backing options was to become a comic book character in the graphic novel series that's going to be based on this game. So Crypto Cartel right there. So
the line that I bought obviously was sharks, all about the law and lawyers and whatnot. So we'll see what kind of a character I become in that.
Yeah, she showed a photo of it earlier, but yeah, so that's like one of the characters they had in the game. And like as I mentioned before, there's the armors resource that's in the game. So and there's and once again there's a I have a promo for everyone watching right now. So if you go to my website, andythegamemaker.com, and then when you buy a copy of Crypto Cartel and put in the promo code LegalBytes, it's free shipping.
Nice.
So
nice.
there you have it.
And link is in the description below along with the promo code. So
yep. So
cool.
thank you so much, everyone. This is great. You know, Nate, Kurt, it's fun chatting with you.
Yeah.
Dealing with me and my absurd behavior. But I love it. It's great. It's fun. And thanks everyone for watching, and thank you, chat, for all the fun things.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, Andy. It's been a nice bit of levity.
For sure.
Having you in here.
Okay. All right. See ya.
All right. See ya. Bye. Yeah. So that's my brother. All righty. Let's keep watching.
Took the church set and put the crime tape around it, the yellow tape, and forced us all to the perimeters of the parking area where we sat and waited. She was in the church.
Oh my God, you're right. Okay. Way to be a dingus. Okay, there we go. Silly me. Okay. Do you want me to rewind it, or did you guys hear it? I guess I could rewind it a little bit, just a little bit.
Of the parking area where we sat and waited. She was in the church, and she was not taken out of the church for quite a while.
In the aftermath, there was chaos and confusion.
But nobody told you what happened?
No. It wasn't until I was in the police station. Hours later. I mean, it was like seeing aliens.
Okay, so was it 45 minutes later or was it hours later? So that's what I'm confused about now listening to this.
Timeline is getting confusing.
Yeah, it is.
It was utter disbelief over the idea. It was unacceptable, the idea that it was a live round. And finally, one of the police officers at the conclusion of my interview, I was there for like an hour and a half or so, she takes her phone and she slides it across to me. She says, "That's what came out of Joel's shoulder. A 45 caliber slug. It was a real bullet."
Had you known that Joel had been hit?
No one had any idea until that police officer, that sheriff's officer, said to me, "This is the slug, 45 caliber slug they took out of Joel's arm."
You see,
and then
can you stop it here for a second?
Yeah.
Kind of insanity.
This is the problem with him making these statements. Nobody believed that he had been shot until that's not true, because we heard the 911 call. Somebody's been shot, right? We have EMTs, two people have been shot. He's going to the hospital. They pulled the slug out his shoulder. So everyone knows he's been shot. He's like, no one knew.
And also, you apparently started to consider the possibility 45 minutes into it, which seems like an incredibly long time, which I don't even believe in the first place, but whatever, let's accept the premise. You started to believe it 45 minutes into it, but hours later when they said it was a real round, this is an idea you had never considered before.
This is getting so stupid. I point a gun at someone, it goes bang, two people go down, and I think one fainted and one's having a heart attack with grabbing their shoulder. Really? Is this really what he wants people to believe? This is like ridiculously crazy here.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. It's like things are starting to get shifty in the way that he's telling the story.
Inducing agony of thinking that someone put a live bullet in the gun.
All right, so that's the end of part 2.
Unscripted.
Unscripted.
Again, he may have coordinated, but even assuming he didn't coordinate, so he didn't know exactly the questions, it's a softball interview. So you can probably, and with even a quarter decent crisis management firm, you should be able to think of probably some of the questions they're going to be asking and come up with some pretty good answers. So yeah, the idea that this is completely unrehearsed or unscripted, I'm not buying it.
Yeah, this is 100% rehearsed. He knew what he was going to say, but I think the story just starting to make no sense.
Yeah,
even up to the time of the shooting, okay, but because you have other witnesses you can rely on, that type of thing. But all this aftermath stuff, it just he's really digging himself a hole, because I don't believe any of this shit. But there's no way that you can tell me you shoot two people and you're like, I don't know what happened. They could have fainted. Two people down, one screaming, "Oh my God!" It's just like and then now he doesn't know 2 hours later till the cop shows. No one knew until the cop showed us the bullet. Like, no, people called 911 and said somebody was shot. So it's like what, and this is where I think it gets to, what's he trying to hide at that point in time, right? Why is he trying to sell us a story? Because the truth you don't have to sell. Why is he trying to sell us the story?
Yeah.
Agreed. So, you ready for part 3?
Oh, just tell me, at any point, does George Stephanopoulos ask, or does Alec Baldwin otherwise bring up the fact or report of these 2 prior incidents? Do at any point do they ask, hey, did you know about these 2 prior incidents? Do these 2 prior incidents happen? Because that question didn't get asked.
I don't know,
before.
because now we're getting into a point where where I haven't seen it.
Okay, because it didn't come up earlier when that moment would have come up, like where he says, I was unaware of any problems on set. That would be the logical point to ask that question.
But we know that
do these prior 2 incidents occur? Did you have knowledge of that? Of
But-
course,
but
it's
we
George
know-
Stephanopoulos. It's softball. So what do we expect?
But we know we know that statement, that when he said that was a lie, because he before that he said that he knew of the letter, and he actually met with the guy about his safety concerns.
Yeah.
So when he said so that's what I'm saying. He's just kind of all over the place here.
Yeah.
with
And
his own
also,
statements.
this super chat right here is a really good point too. There were statements. It was reported that immediately afterwards he yelled, "Why was I handed a hot gun?" So, but
Yeah.
I think she had a heart attack. or
Oh,
maybe
they
she
had
just
a heart
fainted.
attack. This hot gun shot these people and they all fainted. What happened?
Would you agree with me that a definition of a heart attack is the cessation of the heartbeat? If so, then this gun caused a heart attack.
I don't know that is the actual medical definition of a heart attack, because I think it has something to do with
Cardiac
constriction of the muscles.
I know. I'm just trying to be cute.
I'm holding you to it. All right, let's watch part 3.
Tonight, breaking news.
A fatal shooting on the set of Peter Baldwin's new movie in New Mexico.
There we go.
Something went horribly wrong here in Santa Fe.
Was this 45 minutes in, or was this
We've
immediately
all
after?
seen that picture of you off the set in that hour or so after the gun went off. What were you doing? What was going through your mind?
At the end of, she was laying there, and she was there for a while. I was amazed at how long they didn't get her in a car and get her up, but they waited and a helicopter came.
Again, someone else's fault.
And by the time the helicopter took off with her and literally lifted off, we were all glued to that process outside.
Still no idea it was live round though at this point?
When she finally left, I don't know how long it was. She was there 30 minutes, 40 minutes. It seemed like a very long time. But they kept saying, well, she's stable. Like nobody, just as you disbelieved that there was a live round in the gun, you disbelieved that this was going to be a fatal accident.
So you didn't know exactly how serious it was.
At the very end of my interview with the sheriff's department, they said to me, we regret to tell you that she didn't make it. She died. They told me right then and there. And that's when I went in the parking lot and called my wife to talk to my wife.
Again, the timing is just strange to me. I don't know what you guys are thinking.
You know what? It's part of me doesn't believe anything he's saying, to be honest with you right now, right? There's just too many holes in it, up after the whole gunshot thing. But the other half of me, because I love trying to kind of pull myself out of the emotional context.
Yeah.
And so the other part of me is, if I just shot somebody accidentally, how would I feel? Right? I would be in shock. I would be irrational. I would be saying things. I would be doing things that were, you were like, Nate's looking kind of strange. He just shot two people and saying, why is he saying they fainted? No, you shot him, fool. Wake up, wake up. So part of me does.
That's true.
Fair point to Nate.
Yeah.
Fair point.
Yes,
Okay,
part of me is
we'll
like,
give him some slack.
Yeah.
Part of me is like, I'm not thinking, we're thinking super hyper, but I don't know.
It's true. Yeah, that is a very fair point, that traumatic events can really affect your memory, and your recall of those events. So I mean, he may have said something in the moment and then later remembers, like, oh no, I didn't know what was going on or something. I don't know, but there's the holes that are in his story are just a little bit too big for me to really believe it. But it's true. I mean, like there could be, especially with regards to his recall of the timing of things, I think could be the biggest area where, like the brain tries to protect itself from trauma. So it tries to sort of block out certain memories and change things a bit sometimes because of that. But yeah, there's definitely a possibility that has an impact on what he's saying here. Lillian of Cordova says the timeline's vague. They said the shooting happened on the 12th day. Didn't Baldwin say earlier that they'd been shooting 10 days by the time he arrived? Am I right in thinking he's been on set 2 days when he shoots her?
There's problems in the timeline.
Yeah, there definitely are a lot of problems there. So, but yeah.
But even with a lot of this, though, and I know people are going to hate to hear this, but it's just the fact of the reality is that everything else we're talking about, other than the actual what happened before the firing and his culpability, there is really going about whether we believe his statements are credible, whether we believe that with his recollection of the events are accurate and true. When he pulled that hammer back and not the trigger, can we believe that he lacks the culpability? Mm-hmm. And I think in this moment, we have other witnesses who said, well, his finger wasn't on the trigger, right? And we have all these other witnesses who say, well, yeah, the guy did scream cold gun. So, even though I think there's a huge amount of issues with his statements post-shot, I think that, you don't really have to rely on his credibility so much for that as the credibility of everyone else who was there. The AD is saying he told him it was a cold gun, right? So it's that I think is going to be more impactful than what he's saying afterwards, because all this is kind of like, okay, you're acting ridiculously afterwards, but what's the evidence? What evidence can we trust?
Yeah. Which if the only person that says his finger wasn't on the trigger is David Hall, I would personally not trust that evidence or that testimony as much as if it was some random crew member who didn't have any sort of risk of culpability in this case. So if he's the only one that says that and everyone else is like, I don't know. And then the investigators go and run all kinds of tests on this gun and they say there's nothing defective about this gun. That doesn't add up with what Alec Baldwin is saying.
Yeah, I agree, but I'm saying just as of right now, without that evidence that
of course
changed their mind, then this is all we have to go on, right?
Yeah, no, I do agree. That's a very fair point. Okay, let's continue.
Shock and grief. Halyna's husband, Matthew, posted a tribute to Halyna. Halyna inspired us all with her passion and vision, and her legacy is too meaningful to encapsulate in words. Our loss is enormous.
When this happened, her husband comes to town, her husband, Matthew, and I met with him and their son. And he was as kind as you could be.
What can you possibly say to him?
I didn't know what to say. He hugged me and he goes, I suppose you and I are going to go through this together, he said. And I thought, well, not as much as you are, and his little boy is there who's 9 years old. I have 6 kids now. I have my older daughter, Ireland, but of the 6 kids that Ilaria and I have, my oldest is 8. I have a 9-month-old baby. And I think to myself, this little boy doesn't have a mother anymore. And I know that in my life, I'm with my kids and I'm doing quite well with my kids. My kids and I are having a great time, right until my wife walks in the room. And then I become invisible. My kids all go and they jump on top of their mother. And this boy doesn't have a mother anymore.
It's interesting to me that so far he hasn't cried talking about this part, because I would think that this would be a point of great emotion. I mean, he looks like maybe he's about to. I don't know. Granted, I haven't seen part 3 yet, but that's just something that I was thinking is like he's much more emotional talking about the hard work of the crew members on set than he is talking about this boy losing his mother, which I think is interesting.
And there's nothing we can do to bring her back. And I told him, I said, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to convey to you how sorry I am and how I'm willing to do anything I can to cooperate.
In the aftermath of the shooting, a torrent of criticism.
The first thing you do when you pick up that gun is you make sure that it's never pointed at anybody.
He should have known that an AD handing you a gun and saying it's cold isn't the same as several people showing you an empty gun.
If I were holding that gun, I would have checked it, wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm. People said to me, I got countless people online saying, you idiot, you never point a gun at someone. Well, unless you're told it's empty and it's the director of photography who's instructing you on the angle for a shot we're going to do. And she and I had this thing in common where we both thought it was empty, and it wasn't. And that's not her responsibility. That's not my responsibility. Whose responsibility remains to be seen. But I do.
Well, there are some who say
right
you're
there.
never supposed to.
That's the point.
Yeah.
He knows who's responsible. It's either the person who handed you the gun or the armorer, right? There's only two other people who could be responsible for this.
But he doesn't want to say it. He doesn't want to come out and say their names. Even when he was talking about someone handed me the gun, the AD, he never named David Halls.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Yeah. Because there's the person who handed him that gun and told him it was a cold gun. Now, I honestly believe that from now on in Hollywood, people are going to be checking guns like crazy, right? Ain't nobody going to be just pointing guns at anybody. That life is over. But if the person if he was supposed to check that gun, he's going to jail. And if he wasn't supposed to check that, if it was reasonable for him not to check that gun, he's going to be cleared. And that's the key issue in this case, whether he was supposed to check that gun or not. Now, I honestly believe he's supposed to check that gun. But if there are procedures and policies where they never checked it and he wasn't supposed to check it, then I can see him not being charged.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. And I think that's a really good point, is that, so in thinking about like his motivations for doing this, obviously they showed the media clips of people saying like, well, I would check it every single time, and he's kind of saying like, well, you don't know my job or whatever. What you said, Nate, about the fact that everybody is now going to be checking the gun in Hollywood. I mean, number one, I would hope so. I would definitely hope so. There have been instances where, all kinds of safety issues have happened on sets and things haven't changed, but maybe this is getting enough media attention that he may be getting blackballed to a certain extent in Hollywood. That may be one of the reasons why he's feeling so pressured, why he wants to come out with this kind of an interview, because there's the court of law and then there's the court of public opinion. And this is one of those cases where both of those are definitely at play here. And if he wants to continue making money, continue making movies, which he said he just now started to love doing again, that may be one of the reasons.
He's on the right side. He's on the correct side of the political aisle. They'll forgive him in no time.
Could be unless this, adds scrutiny, by the public of Hollywood in general. I don't know. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Who knows? There's a fairly strong connection between Hollywood and the media, right? But anyway.
One way to put it.
Yeah. So, all right. Let's continue.
To point a gun at anyone on a set, no matter what.
Unless the person is the cinematographer who's directing me where to point the gun for her camera angle.
That sounds like blaming.
That's exactly what happened.
Because, again, there's a whole room full of people, and if everybody in the room full of people says this is what she was directing him to do, it's just going to be hard to say. This is a tough case, because if what he's saying is correct, and that's a big if. Where do you go with that?
I mean, you're looking at lower mens rea standards. I mean, you're looking at like a negligence or recklessness rather than knowing or purposeful. So I think you're still, I mean, for involuntary manslaughter, I think you still got it, because I mean, you don't have the heightened mens rea requirement.
Yeah.
If you can show other acts of him having a generally depraved mind, or generally whatever the exact wording of the statute is, but generally that he is not exercising due caution,
conscious disregard
based on the hiring issues, based on the interaction with staff issues, based on the fact that he had these conversations with the DP, so maybe had the conversations with this, based on these prior shootings, which based on the letter, based on the standards and the practice and checking the gun or whatever. And perhaps because the armor wasn't on set, maybe because of budgeting, which he's also responsible for that aspect. So there's a whole bunch of factors that look like they could, to my mind, get to a criminal negligence or criminal recklessness standard, at least plausibly.
But how do you overcome the intervening cause? Because that's what this is going to come down to, whether there was an intervening cause, because causation, right?
Yeah.
The intervening cause is the person who handed him the gun and told him it was cold. That's the intervening cause. Now, you can overcome that if you could say, well, he was supposed to check the gun. That overcomes the intervening cause. But if that's not the case and that's not what happened, then you have a really great defense in saying this is the intervening cause that got it.
If I were the
Yeah.
prosecutor, I would be looking at all of the other film sets that he's been on that have involved a gun and bringing on the gun experts that he has worked with in the past, and then asking like, what kind of conversations have you had with him? You know, what was the standard and practice that he was used to on all of these other film sets? I would be digging into that whole history to see whether he as an individual should have known better.
That's actually a good point. But the thing is that, you know, it'll always come back to, even if you're making a $200 million movie, the procedures and policies, even the place where you're at is going to be different, right? Maybe there may be different rules and laws that dictate what happens there versus we're in New Mexico on a $5 million set. You know, now the policies and things are different. So, you know, generally, yes, you can say, well, generally handling guns in a certain way, but then again, you know, it's really going to be specific based on, if I was his lawyer, I would be saying that that's irrelevant, right? It's irrelevant what he was doing in Alaska. It's irrelevant what he's doing. Those are different places. Those are different movie sets. Those are different budgets. Those are different situations. Here we're talking about.
The moment you say budget, though, the moment you say budget, I'm going to crush you.
Of course, you should, but that's what he has to say.
The moment you say
different
budgets, I'm going to own your ass.
Yeah, I think that wouldn't play well in front of a jury, because they would be like, all right, budget schmudge it. We're talking about human lives here.
Yeah. But that's the thing about a good attorney. A good attorney has to get in front of that bad fact and explain to you, yes, there's a cost and analysis, and you know, no matter how much money you spend, people are going to get hurt. And in this case, we spent amount of money and things were good, but someone got hurt. But now that doesn't mean, you know, if we can only spend money on safety, we can never make a movie. So it's incumbent on the attorney to explain that there's a benefit, there's a ratio here, there's a benefit cost benefit analysis, and unfortunately sometimes bad things happen, but that doesn't mean it's anybody's fault. That's what they did in the Zimmerman trial. They said, yes, it's sad that Trayvon died, but you know, that doesn't mean somebody has to go to jail. Somebody should be responsible. And I think that's the way I would coach it if I was his attorney.
Yeah. Here's a question for all of us. At voir dire, will the defense be able to exclude jurors with frequent gun use based on that they'll be colored by their training? So this is obviously assuming that the charges are filed and this goes to trial. I think the defense would try to, for sure, but whether or not they would be able to, it depends on the jurisdiction. If it's a place like Wisconsin, for example, where most of the jurors had at least some limited exposure to firing a gun, but most of them had someone in their lives that were like regular hunters or regular gun enthusiasts. I mean, if you live in a jurisdiction like that, that's all but impossible. I don't know how you know, this particular county in New Mexico, wherever this trial would be. I'm assuming it would be in New Mexico because that's where it happened. I don't know what their statistics look like, but if there's a lot of people there that typically have experience with guns, it would be very difficult for the defense to keep them out. I don't know. Do you guys have anything to add?
The question, as always, is can you put that aside and judge it based on the facts that will be developed in this case? Because what will matter, as always, is what goes to his mental knowledge, his mental state. What training did he have or didn't he have? Now, if he didn't have training, that can also be a factor against him, right? So it's like, again, it's an either way. Either way, the prosecution wins. Heads I wins, tails you lose. You had a lot of training. Okay, great. Then you knew better than to do this, blah, blah, blah. You had no training. Oh, so you're used to handling firearms on sets with absolutely no training. Oh, okay. So, you know, I can put that aside as a juror and just based on the prosecutor, I'll nail him to the wall either way. Yeah. So it's fine. I don't care what the answer is, because either way I win.
Yeah.
I do want to make the point. People keep saying, well, someone died and someone should be held responsible. That's the same argument they used in the Kyle Rittenhouse case. Two people died and two people. Right. So just because someone died, this is going to sound cold and heartless, but just because someone died doesn't mean that someone's criminally responsible for their death.
That is true.
Civilly responsible. Kyle Rittenhouse was not criminally responsible. Someone died, right? So just if your argument is someone died, so he should be put in jail, that's not an argument, right? That's an emotional take to it. And I understand, you know, people want to say, you know, someone did die, someone should be held responsible. But if you think that for him, you should also think that for Kyle Rittenhouse, which I don't think works.
Now, I didn't want to unduly step on your point, so Nate, so I'll acknowledge it. You are correct in asking about the intervening causal factor. You are absolutely correct to raise the issue that the AD may very well be a legally intervening causal factor. And the fact that this person handed and said cold gun goes a very long way to breaking the causal factor. So I didn't want to unduly step on your point because it's very sharp. There are ways to potentially get around that based on, again, training standards, whether he should check the gun, protect, why the armorer wasn't on set when there's a gun in actual use, whose decision is that? So there are other factors that can still get you to where you want to be, or at least potentially. But you're right, the fact that happened is a problem for the prosecution to potentially work around. Yeah. And I also agree that just because someone died doesn't mean anyone's necessarily legally responsible. I'm just, at least in my own mind, looking for potential clues based on various things and looking at potential things. I was like, oh, it could be this, could be this, could be this, could be this. And I'm like building in my mind possibilities. I'm like, oh, okay, well, there's at least plausibility. But you're right. It might ultimately not win in the end because of the reasons you stated. So
yeah. And Nate, there's a question for you here. Saying, I assume you'd at least agree he gets beat up in civil court for being responsible, regardless of criminal charges, or am I crazy? Well, it's a low. Sorry, I'll let Nate answer this.
No, we've been saying that. This person probably just didn't make it from when we first started. Yes, civilly they're screwed. They are going to be paying out of the behind civilly. You might as well just scream guilty, guilty, guilty civilly, right? Like they are liable. Yeah. This is not even a question of whether they're civilly liable. We're talking about whether we can prove or they can prove through the evidence that we're seeing now whether he's criminally liable. And again, I think if he goes to the desk, picks up the gun, and does this and shoots and kills these people, no doubt about it, he's criminally liable. You have involuntary manslaughter all day, every day. Yeah. But what we're talking about here, and uncivil law, I think made a great recitation of the issue, is that there's an intervening cause. And the intervening cause is the person who handed them the gun, said it was cold, and everyone in the room also thought it was a cold gun. The director, the people behind the camera, everyone thought the gun was safe. So that is a hell of an argument for an intervening cause. Now, people may not like that, but if I'm his lawyer and and I can't speak for them, but the two lawyers above me, if they were representing Alec Baldwin, I can bet you a paycheck that they would both be arguing that there's an intervening cause in this case.
Of course.
Am I wrong, guys?
Yes, completely right.
So, so people asking me like I'm crazy for saying it. No, this is how you lawyer it, baby. This is how you lawyer it.
Also, Andy decided to come back to the chat. He said, I might not be there on the stream, but I will forever be in your hearts. Always humble, always my humble brother.
Awesome.
And then one more, and then we'll continue. Do industry organizations publish best/recommended practices that the process on this set can be compared against? I don't know.
Yes, think about go back to torts, right? The what's it called? It's not the industry standard. It's called the something care. The like the normal care of whatever. You see it a lot in malpractice suits for doctors.
Yeah.
The standard of care.
Yeah.
The general standard of care. So for those in civil cases, there's like a general standard of care. If, for instance, if you had ailment A, and the general standard of care is they give you pill A, and the doctor says I'm giving you pill B, and pill B kills you, then the doctor is not adhering to the general standard of care, and that's a negligence claim. And it's the same thing here, except now you're looking to see whether giving pill B was so reckless that you could have known that you put this person in unnecessary harm or danger. And that's kind of what we got here. We do have the fact that I think no doubt about it, Alec Baldwin put this woman in unnecessary danger where she could be killed. But we're just determining whether he's responsible or whether there was another cause that could alleviate his criminal liability. But make no doubt about it, right now he's looking down the barrel of maybe some possible charges.
That's a good choice of words, Nate.
It's musical chairs time between Alec Baldwin, the AD, and the armorer.
That's
left when the music stops.
And the question here was whether or not those best or recommended practices are published. But Mike the Dad Crosby, I see a super chat. I haven't highlighted it yet, but he says that SAG, the Screen Actors Guild, has a PDF on gun safety. That's interesting. Yeah. So, alrighty, let's continue.
That day, I did exactly what I've done every day on that movie.
Which is what?
Which is that there's an armorer there, and that word is new to me.
Is it?
In the years I've been in this,
what did you call it?
It was a prop guy or woman, and the prop person would.
That's weird to me.
That is very weird. Again, it's very weird.
Really?
I mean, he did kind of indicate that he had lost his love for film, so maybe he wasn't involved with so many films that had guns on them. So that's a possibility. Like,
have you ever seen The Phantom? His breakout movie, The Phantom. There was all he was getting shot up the whole movie.
Well, so the question is whether or not they used the term armorers back then. You know, like of course he has had plenty of movies that have involved guns. So did they use the term armorer in the last movie that he was in that used a gun? That would be. But see, like the thing is, by doing an interview like this, you give so much time for the prosecution to look into stuff and to be like, huh. Let's dig in. Let's dig in. Did they actually
use? You've ever
use?
been on the history of time and see if they ever use the term armorer in any of them.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
and before they filed any kind of charges. Anyway.
Yeah, no, I said
I
the
mean,
Phantom.
sometimes they would insist on dem.
What
You
what's
guys
that?
know? No, I said the Phantom, but everybody in the chat is saying the Shadow. We're right. It's the Shadow. He got shot up a whole bunch of times.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Demonstrating for you and the camera crew. They take the gun. If it was a contemporary gun, they show you the chamber. They show you the clip. They say, the gun is cold. And you look at it and go, thank you. And in the 40 years.
Sometimes that would happen. Not all the time.
Well, but no, sometimes they wouldn't demonstrate to me. Some insisted on demonstrating. They would do the demonstration for everybody there right before we rolled the camera or rehearsed. Then there were others who they
Stop it here.
Yeah.
This is good because that shows a standard. Like, no, some insisted on doing this before to make sure. So he's digging himself a little bit here because that, let's see what somebody has to say. Yeah,
I definitely agree because that shows at least some instances where he was informed that this is what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Is the statement "Why was I handed a hot gun" admissible? Is it hearsay? That would
Excited
be admissible.
utterance, also party admission.
Party point admission.
Yeah, several reasons why that would be an exception to. So it technically is hearsay, but it falls under one of the many exceptions that would allow it to be admitted. All right, let's continue.
didn't do that because I trusted them to do the job. And again, this is not just me pointing a gun at somebody else, people pointing guns at me. I've gotten shot and killed in films before where people had to shoot a flash round at me, and I trusted them to do their job. And in the 40 years I've been in this business, all the way up until that day, I never had a problem.
How many times do you think you handled a gun in those 40 years?
Oh, God, I don't know. What amazes me is how many rounds of bullets do you believe have been fired on the sets of movies and TV shows in the last 75 years?
No idea.
Right. It couldn't be above 1 billion. You've had hundreds and hundreds of millions of bullets fired on the sets of films and TV shows, and 4 or 5 people were killed. Now, those deaths are tragic and abhorrent. And believe me, I would do anything in my power. I would do anything in my power to undo what was done. I don't know how that bullet arrived in that gun. I don't know. But I'm all for doing anything that will take us to a place where this is less likely to happen again.
Every single time I'm handed a gun on a set, every time, Mark, they hand me a gun, I look at it, I open it, I show it to the person I'm pointing it to, we show it to the crew. Every single take, you hand it back to the armor when you're done, you do it again. Right. Everyone does it. Everybody knows it.
How do you respond?
Stop it
That's
there.
Standard practice that's standard practice.
Standard of practice that shows an industry standard.
You got me.
And standard of practice for good gun handling. If I'm handing a gun to Nate the lawyer, I will clear it, show him I'm clearing it. I'll hand it to Nate, and having seen me just do that, he will also clear it. And if he has to hand it back to me, he will clear it, and then he'll hand it back to me. And having just seen him do it, I will clear it again. It's repetitive to the point of obsessiveness, because we need to make sure when there's ammo potentially in play with live guns. So yeah, that's what you do.
But you know what that just did? That just overcame that intervening cause.
Yeah.
What he just said overcame the intervening cause. And I think now I would charge him now. If that's the way it goes on Hollywood sets, and all these actors are saying, no, we always check Will Smith, this guy, and you're an A-list actor, and everybody's saying we checked the gun before we do anything like this, and you didn't check it. Now that's overcome our intervening cause, and now we're charged with involuntary manslaughter.
Yep. Here's a question: when is objective versus subjective reasonableness used?
It's usually usually both.
Both. Yeah.
Usually both are pretty typical. Sometimes you see a statute that only has one or the other. For example, in the Rittenhouse shooting for the was it the top line count? Yeah, I think the top line count in the Rittenhouse shooting didn't have objective reasonableness in its standard. Something like that. But it was one of the charges we discussed recently. But usually it's both.
Yeah. Well, one of the big things too about is that when you're talking about objective reasonableness too, it's weird because they kind of make like a fake person and say, what would this fake person who's acting reasonably do versus the subjective reason? Because, you know, like if you're crazy or if you're young or you're not that experienced. So I think here the standard's really going to be, what would someone in his position with his knowledge and background subjectively, what would they have considered doing? And if he's saying he's been on thousands of movie sets and this is the way it's been done, I think he's going to have a hard argument to ask for some objective standard. Not because, you know, if you have all this knowledge and safety and know to keep people safe, then it's just going to be it's going to be weird to say, well, you know, what would some random person do in this situation? No, what would you do? What's reasonable for somebody with your background to do?
The objective person is the jury. That's who the objective person is.
Yeah,
you ask the jury. That's exactly why. It's like the objective person is, the way we normally phrase it, is the ordinary man of ordinary prudence, or sometimes what we call the man on the bus. You know, he's not particularly sophisticated. He's not.
I've actually never heard the man on the bus.
You actually never heard the man on the bus?
No, I've never heard that phrase. No.
Oh wow! I this is actually fairly common. I feel excited to be able to tell you something. Yeah, and actually in different countries it's called slightly different things, but they all have kind of like the same expression. So in England it's called like the man on a such and such train, and in Australia it's called like the man on such and such whatever. But yeah, it's all the same idea. It's the man on the bus, and the idea always is we need a man that's not particularly poor or not a man that's particularly rich. You know, he's on a bus. We need a man who is of basic competence. He knows where the bus is. He knows where the schedule is. He knows how to pay the fare. He knows how to get on. He knows how to get off. He knows how to read a map, right? So this is the ordinary person. He's not particularly poor, not particularly rich, not necessarily particularly well educated, but he's also not a complete idiot. And that's the man on the bus, the everyman, on the bus. And that's the jury,
I like
man.
it.
Yeah,
I like
there you
it.
go. I told Alita about the man on the bus. She hadn't heard that one.
Yeah.
You're muted. You're muted,
Nate.
No, I was listening, but I do want to say, I was just thinking, I have never been in a situation where somebody's handed me a firearm, fake or real, and not checked it to make sure it was safe. Like I don't think I've ever done that. If it's like, well, I'm assuming you guys have handled firearms before, but have you ever been in a situation where somebody's handed you a firearm and you're okay, it must be good because they said it's good? I've never been in that situation before.
Yeah, because people that are unfamiliar with it are usually a little bit intimidated by it, because you know that this is something that can take someone's life. I mean, that's at least been my experience, you know. Christopher Schaefer says, I think he someone said earlier, page 13, I think it was Christopher Schaefer said page 13 of the SAG guidelines for guns is where you can find it. Their policy for the Screen Actors Guild says no one shall be issued a firearm, can be issued one until they are trained in safe use and firing procedures, and before each use another safety meeting. So, I mean, Alec Baldwin is definitely a member of the Screen Actors Guild. This would be a standard that he would be held to in any case.
Because to his knowledge base, at least the bare minimum.
That's about as formal a policy as you can get for anyone.
And if this is a SAG movie, then that you got to follow those policies. Then
I would argue even if it wasn't, because he should be
too.
held to that standard regularly anyway. And with the amount of time that he's been acting, I would argue it doesn't matter whether this is a SAG.
It goes to his knowledge base, right? And if he's ignoring his own knowledge base and doing something sloppier.
Well, there's a difference between following a policy you have to follow and following a policy that you know of. And I think if this is a SAG movie, which it is, right? Because if he's a SAG actor, he's doing a movie. This has to be this. You know, he's in the union, so this is probably a SAG movie. Then that policy is something that you have to follow, right? So I think that screws them. If that policy is in effect, and I'm with you guys now. Before I was kind of like, I don't see it. I'm moving really to that. Involuntary manslaughter.
That's why I love doing these analyses live and talking about them, because like we can have people shifting back and forth. That was really interesting with the Chad Reed situation and stuff too. Little Philly says, not really buying the industry standard exception or exemption from criminal prosecution idea. Even doctors can be charged criminally, such as Michael Jackson. Perhaps it protects in civil insurance settlements. So doctors are also specifically held to all kinds of standards just for their licensing too. So that's a little bit of a different example, but I mean, I also understand the reticence in trying to, or in accepting the possibility that somebody could be held to a lower standard, especially in a criminal case. Like that's another question is like whether or not that's appropriate, in a case like this, when we're talking about, lives at risk. Is that overall standard, is that industry standard something that is reasonable? Like that would be another question, but I don't know if that would go to his liability.
See, with this person, I think with the super chat doesn't understand is that we're not saying that the policy overcomes any criminal liability, right? We're saying is that you have to put yourself in a reasonable person's they're trying to figure this out based on what a reasonable person would do in that position, right? So if the policies and stuff about gun safety in this particular situation is that when this person hands you the gun, they handed you a safe gun that's not this, that's that, all this stuff, and you can trust in that system, then when he fires the gun, he's doing it reasonably, right? When he's pointing the gun at people, he's doing it reasonably. And that's where we're judging whether it was reasonable in that moment for him to do what he did without checking the gun. That's the issue. So if they had this system in place, then that's going to go with whether it was reasonable for him to do what he did. And I'm assuming, without any other information, if the AD handed him a cold gun and said it was cold, then the question again that I think you have to answer, the person who made that super chat, is, was it reasonable for him to rely on the AD's declination that it was a cold gun, or should he have checked it?
Yeah. Very well put. Someone asked in the chat if I had done a poll on whether or not people think that Alec Baldwin will be charged. So I decided to start that because I feel like we're a good ways through this, and people can probably make some sort of a determination based on what we've seen so far. So let me know what you guys think. And then otherwise we will continue.
To actors like George Clooney, you say that every time they were handed a gun, they checked it themselves.
Well, there were a lot of people who felt it necessary to contribute some comment to the situation, which really didn't help the situation.
Okay. That's not a response.
If your protocol is you check the gun every time, well, good for you. Good for you. I mean, I probably handled weapons as much as the gun every time. Well, good for you.
Hang on.
You have if your protocol is you check the gun every time, well, good for you. Good for you.
You have your protocol.
I probably handled weapons as much as any other actor in films with an average career. Again, shooting or being shot by someone. And in that time, I had a protocol, and it never let me down.
Why did you choose in your 40 years not to check the gun yourself?
What I was taught by someone years ago was, as I said, if I took a gun and I popped a clip out of a gun, or I manipulated the chamber of a gun, they would take the gun away from me and redo it. The prop person said, don't do that, when I was young. And they'd say, one thing you would need to understand is we don't want the actor to be the last line of defense against a catastrophic breach of safety with the gun.
Why not?
Rebuttal? Maybe they should be.
Why not? Why not?
Maybe they should be a line of defense.
Yeah, I mean, the first line of defense, the prop master and all the other people, but why not the last line? Why would you not want the actor to be the last line since they're the last person in the sequence? What?
This is why you train them. This is why they train. This is the gun. This is how you look. This is how you check to make sure it's empty. I'm not.
I am doubtful.
just for anybody in the chat who's ever been to any gun safety and who handled any weapon, you know for a fact, no matter who hands you the gun, it could be God that hands you the gun. They'll tell you, open it up
down
and make
from
sure
Mount
it's
Sinai.
good, right? Yeah. Like, okay, here's the gun. I don't understand. This is not making him look good at all. This is just sloppy. Like, no, you check it. Yeah, you check it.
Yeah. It doesn't look good.
Good for them. It's such a weak ass response to. It's such a damning response to. Well, they feel it's necessary for their protocol. Oh, good for them. What kind of fucking
what kind of response
is that?
Yeah, agreed.
Good
Nate, there's a question for you. If it was his life on the line, pointing the gun at himself, would he have checked it or just trusted the AD saying cold gun? Which I don't know that you know that answer.
I don't know. I know I would have checked it regardless, right? I know what I would have done, and I know what everybody else would have done.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that yes, from what I'm understanding here, I believe he should have checked the gun. I believe if they told him put that gun to the head and pull the trigger, he would have checked the gun. But again, what I believe would happen, and the facts in this case, maybe just two different things. It may lead to two different outcomes. I just don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. So if God hands you the gun, is this considered reasonable certainty? Baha.
Man, God gave man free will. It's still on you, baby.
Yeah. It's that whole response that he gave of like, hey, good for you for having that kind of a policy, but that's not the policy. It's not the case because thank you so much for giving us the policy from SAG, Christopher Schaefer, because that is very damning to have in juxtaposition to what he's saying here. So that's a whole other conversation. All right, let's continue.
My job, they told me, man or woman, my job is to make sure the gun is safe, and then I hand you the gun and I declare the gun safe. The crew's not relying on you to say that it's safe. They're relying on me to say that it's safe. When that person who was charged with that job handed me the weapon, I trusted them, and I never had a problem.
And this was from the beginning of your career?
From day one. There's one person that's supposed to make sure that what is in the gun is right and that what's wrong is not in the gun. One person has that responsibility to maintain the gun.
Stop this.
What is the actor's responsibility?
Stop this.
Yep.
Just so everyone knows. Now, I understand everybody in the chat's going to get mad. That's total bullshit. Because if you go to any gun range, right, there's one person who's checking the gun, handing the gun, and when they hand that mother to you, they make sure you got to check it too, right? No matter how, even though it's true, there's one person's responsibility, but when they hand you that piece back, you got to check it too. What he just said is total BS. I'm just going to say it. I'm civil law. I know you're more of a gun guy, so you know. But what he's saying is total BS. That is not the way it goes. You don't just put your trust in one person. Whatever he says, that's the way it goes. That is not the way it goes. It's infuriatingly bad.
If Jerry Michalak himself hands you a revolver and says it's a cold gun, you check that gun, even though it's Jerry Michalak.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, he's like one of the best shooters ever, especially like with revolvers. That's why I brought up his name. He's basically the best of all time. So even if he does it, you check it.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed. Leon's Law. But if you could get away with killing someone because you were told the gun was cold, why doesn't everyone do it? That's also a good point.
That's a good point.
Yep. Let's continue, shall we? This is going great for Alec Baldwin, don't you think?
No, this is it was going good before at the first couple one, but the last one is like, what the hell? No. If somebody hands you a gun, no. It's just not one person checks it and good luck. No, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yep.
I guess that's a tough question because the actor's responsibility going this day forward is very different than it was the day before that.
Oh, of course.
Wasn't it very different following the death of Brandon Lee?
It was not a higher standard as applied to me, but of course now it's a higher standard as applied to everyone else after
Why
me.
wasn't it a higher standard the day Brandon Lee died? And during the Crow? Wasn't that the day that they became a higher standard during Brandon Lee? I seem to remember them making it a higher standard after Brandon Lee. So no, but thanks for playing.
That's a terrible answer. That is such a terrible answer because it just like that along with the I assumed, she told me to point the gun this way. So-and-so told me to do this and that. I didn't know anything. It's not my fault. I don't feel any guilt. It's just, there's just so much here that like if his, so, we're talking about the two different possibilities for his reasons for doing this interview, whether it's for aiming with an eye towards the court of law or the court of public opinion. This is probably more geared towards the court of public opinion, right? Like that's probably why he felt an itch to do this interview. This is not helping in that case because he looks terrible. He doesn't look sympathetic at all. He doesn't look empathetic at all. And he looks like he's just like, well, I'm above all of the standards and there are new standards now after me, but none of those apply to me. That's just me and my rant.
I think those SAG rules in response to gun handling were written very specifically after Brandon Lee. I think we were in very directly responsive to that. So
yes.
And that's been, what was that? Geez, that was 90s. That was 25 years ago or something like that. So yeah, it's been a while. Yeah. Yeah, 93. Someone said so. It's been a little bit now. It's been almost 30 years.
Yeah, no,
Also,
I
1993 was 30 years ago, and that's depressing. I wish I hadn't realized that fact.
You're too old to die young now. I love that song.
Oh man, yeah. But this is just I very much see charges happening after this interview. Just because there were so many questions, like remember, Kurt, when this first happened, and like within like a day or 2 days, you and I did a live stream together talking about this, and we were like, there's so much that we don't know, and so we can't necessarily say, like, obviously, like someone like Alec Baldwin is someone that is very easy to dunk on in this kind of a conversation, because he's been so outspoken against guns, and he is very liberal in Hollywood, and so when it comes to guns, he's somebody that is very easy for people to sort of just everybody dogpile onto. And so, but I wanted to be very careful
in the beginning, and I think I was also fairly restrained even after. And this is not meant as a criticism, but I think I was restrained even after some people on the panel started coming to conclusions. But yeah, that when you start getting more and more deep into it, you start hearing more and more stuff. You're like, okay, this is now leading down a road of possibilities as you're starting to consider like the letter, and you're considering the Wadokoffs, and you're considering the accidental discharge, stuff we didn't know necessarily right afterwards, and you're considering the armor not being on set, and you're considering whatever, and why is there a live bullet anywhere near this thing, and so forth and so on. So yeah, as we've developed more and more information, it's like, okay, it's looking more and more like Alec here might have some possibilities. But again, Nate was right. There's intervening causal factors. There's other issues for the defense. So it's not like we're home or the state is home free.
Yeah.
But there's definitely enough here to raise your attention. There's enough here to charge.
I would agree. At least for a charge
at this point.
Also, Bipolar Punt pointed out in 1994 movie Shadow, there was a member of the cast titled Armorer, and his name was Steve Carnes.
I have no problem believing that.
Yeah, I believe that. But with all those guns on set, they had to be an armor. Well, one thing, it's difficult because I got to put legal brain on versus how I feel about it. Like, I feel he's full of shit. Yes. I honestly feel he's full of shit. I feel that this was all scripted, and I feel that he's honestly really culpable. He, fucking pardon me French, but he should have known, right? He's got a gun in his hand, and he didn't check it, obviously. But legal brain is telling me, do you have probable cause? Yeah, but if a prosecutor's looking to see if I can convict this guy beyond a reasonable doubt, now we're talking about a hell of a chance. No,
there still would need to be other witnesses to talk to. The other people that were in the room, did they see if he had his finger on the trigger? If did they hear him say anything, any excited utterances, about why was I handed a hot gun, like that kind of stuff that really just sort of tears apart his credibility. And this interview is something that could be used at trial, whether or not he actually would testify, because they could have, I don't know, some kind of experts, I would imagine, would be able to analyze this and give their opinion.
We're going to bring on armorers we're going to bring on people who are called armorers from other movie sets he's been on, and be like, yeah, I'm an armorer. That was my position title. Here's exactly what I told him. Here's exactly how I did it. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's the ability to make your case, but we need to know more. We need to know more about his relationship, about exactly how it was hired, who we talked to, and stuff like that. And that's information that's probably not going to become publicly available. So we may not be able ever, as a public, to reach a definitive conclusion, unless they put out some sort of very detailed statement at some point. But
well, the prosecutor, the investigation here is going to go like this. They're going to look at. There's been probably hundreds of shootings on this set, even with Alec Baldwin, right? He was in for 2 days, but they've been shooting around for a couple of days. Every time that they've used gun, live ammo, or just the prop, what was the procedure? Was it just somebody handing him the gun and him using it? Was it, what happened in all these other times? Because there's a whole bunch of people shooting on this set. And if the procedure has always been this, and people have relied on this procedure, then I think it's going to be less likely for him to be charged, because it's going to be like, well, yeah, Greg does it too, because Greg is in the movie, this guy's in the movie, that guy's in the movie. So it's going to be a lot harder to charge him if he's like, yeah, but this is the procedure, and then I grabbed the guy from this guy who gives the guns all out, and then we had this incident. So I think that's how you really have to look at it if you're talking about what's the investigation going to be here. And I think that's the reason why he's not charged now, because if they've asked those questions, I'm assuming the police have asked those questions. We want to see your procedures, how were all the other shots happen, and I'm assuming they've been saying, yes, it's always happened this way, and this time for some reason we don't know how the gun had a live round. So that's where I think now you're talking about this intervening cause becoming now something that's really keeping him from being charged, because there's enough probable cause to charge him now. Mm-hmm. But I'm thinking, but the DA is probably going to be looking at, can we get over that? Can we get over that hump of beyond a reasonable doubt? And
well, that's what they're supposed to do, Nate. That's exactly what they're supposed to do, which is why we're so critical of Binger, because like, what the hell are you doing? They're not supposed to bring charges unless they're convinced they can get beyond a reasonable doubt. Yeah. So yeah, that's what they should do. Do that.
Well, let's finish. There's 1 minute left on this video, so let's finish.
Okay,
it.
I'm sure the last minute will be redemptive.
Of course, yeah, it's going to totally change our minds completely, 100%.
Now I can't. First of all, I can't imagine I'd ever do a movie that had a gun in it again, and I can't. When you say what is the actor's responsibility, the actor's responsibility is to do what the prop armorer tells him to do, and we did not have a problem. I mean, I understand there was an accidental discharge at one point on the set of a blank round, but we did not have a problem for me until that day. Everything gets slowed down. There's a Zapruder film-esque here. And the issue with that is there's only one question to be resolved, only one. That is, where did the live round come from?
The mystery live round. That is one question, correct?
That's a question. Definitely not the only question.
Yes, there are many other questions.
There are many other questions. Several other questions, some of which we've raised on this channel, for example.
Exactly. Oof. So Santa Fe County, 76% vote Democrat last presidential election, anti-gun, but acquit because Baldwin is a lefty. I don't know.
Possibly.
That's all of those could be factors on a jury's line of thinking. So Mike the Dad Crosby says finger on the trigger shouldn't matter. Mishandling the hammer should be negligent itself.
Negligence doesn't get you criminal though. Negligence gets you civil. So you're right.
I mean, there is such a thing as criminal negligence, but that standard is much higher than the normal civil. With his ego, do you think he would agree with counsel telling him not to testify at trial? I don't know, because you can't. Natalie Wisco was telling me yesterday when she was on this channel that she was like, I've had defendants that really should not be testifying at trial, and they were insistent, and all you can do is prep them as best that you can, because you can never force your client to do something, or force someone to not do something that they are absolutely one line in thinking of what they want to do.
And they have the right to do it. They have the the choice of whether to testify is the defendant's choice. It's not the lawyer's choice.
Yeah, before I call my next witness, can I just state for the record, I think this is a bad idea.
Which I don't know if there would be any professional responsibility issues there with zealous advocacy and whatnot, because then you're saying that you don't have confidence in your own client. So that's an indication there. Oh man. So anyhow, it seems like a demonstration to potentially hostile elected officials, and look at the level of media backing power I can get. Possible. What if witnesses were paid off to lie? Well, that's always a possibility. But if they've already made public statements, like George Clooney would be an interesting person to call as a witness, because he's already made a public statement. So trying to see how he would walk that back into like, well, actually, what I was saying before in no uncertain terms was actually not true somehow, or somehow bending it.
It'd be particularly helpful if they ever worked on set together with guns in play.
Yeah, but then
this would be observable.
Yeah, because I would be objecting to him all day. Like, he's not relevant. He wasn't on this set. What he doesn't like. I would be objecting to Clooney all day. I like to look at this as a defense attorney and say, what's my exposure here? And I think his exposure is high, like incredibly high. But I could easily see him not being charged though. This is not easy. This is not like I can see him being. I can see a prosecutor looking at these facts and saying, I'm not going to charge him. I can see a police officers looking at these facts and saying they're not going to charge him. I understand people want him to be charged, but that doesn't mean he will be. But it's This is not an easy case. This is not an easy case at all.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons prosecutorial discretion exists, and there's I don't know if this is a good example to raise this point or not, but there's such a thing as like a technical violation, and also where, where you're just above the line, it's like technically yes, or also where those elements are more aggravated and heinous in some way. So
Yeah.
I don't know whether or not it's a good idea in a murder or manslaughter be like, well, this is just a mere technical violation or not. But there are different versions of it, shall we say, where maybe the letter of the law contemplates it, but this is just not that case. So yeah.
That's also possible. So 53% of people said that they thought he would get charged. Now I have a new poll saying whether he should be charged, which I anticipate that number is going to be much higher than 53% based on the comments in the chat so far.
Well, I know some people are saying it's political. Some people saying this. Some people saying that. And I just don't fall in line with that. I think if a prosecutor looking at this case, you can have a fair prosecutor going either way. A fair prosecutor saying, here's what I got, and I can't go forward, which I think Binger should have done with the with Rittenhouse, looking at it and saying, I don't have anything here. But then I think a prosecutor like Kurt said, can look at this and saying, well, he has enough knowledge and know-how to which can overcome this intervening cause. But right now, it's just kind of like, if anybody's telling you it's a short thing, I don't think they're I think they're overstating the fact a little bit. Even though I agree, if I was the prosecutor, I would likely charge him and try to figure this out. But again, I don't work there.
Do you guys like his bow tie? Sorry, I'm totally interrupting, and this is a non sequitur.
Oh yeah,
it's a Christmas bow tie.
It's funny when I have to put stuff around my cat's neck, they always scratch it off like, we hate it.
No, Holmes is the most dignified. He understands his assignment, and that he was named after a Supreme Court justice. He's a very formal cat. He's also the chillest cat ever. See, Holmes, look at the camera. Anyway, he's not interested. Okay. Anyway, sorry, that was a total interruption to the conversation, but I couldn't resist. So I think that about does it for me. But this has been a really great live stream. Unless you guys want to add anything else to this conversation, I think it's going to be
one hell of a self-serving interview, and I don't believe any of it.
Yeah, I don't believe any of it either.
Yeah.
Well, I'll ask you guys. Would you guys charge him? Because I would charge him. I think I would charge him.
I would based on this information.
What we know publicly, yes. But
yes.
I only hedged that slightly because, of course, there are other interviews with other people that would be informative on that decision. But based on what we know publicly, yes, I would.
Yeah.
Agreed.
But now the question is like you put the different question. Do you believe he'll be charged? I don't think so. I don't believe he will be charged, but I would charge him.
Yeah, and so I'll close the poll now.
Then the reason the armor is not on set would go a lot to my mind about why we charge her or not. Because if it's a budget issue and she's basically being told not to show up, I mean, she can't be responsible for things. I mean, she can't be responsible for things that she's not allowed to do. It's like, stay home, we're not going to pay you. I mean, maybe on some greater level, she said, no, I should have been there. I should demand it. But from a criminal perspective, even from a civil perspective, if she's being told, stay home, we're not going to pay you, and that something happens. So yeah, it depends a lot why the armor was not there. As to the AD, again, it depends a little bit on practice and trade and the things that he's done in prior sets and safety briefings and things of that nature, and how the gun got to where it did and why he thought that particular location was okay, and other things around that knowledge. But yeah, so ironically, the armor might be the most in the clear of the three.
Yeah, well, right now, if to be fair, if I had to charge one person, the AD's, you charge him with spades, right? I don't see how you get around not charging the AD. Let's say if he picks the gun up off the table and hands it to him, it says cold gun. The armor is charged automatically, right? I don't think there's any way you can get away from not charging the armor, to be honest with you. If he's the one who picked the gun up off the table and handed to him and said cold, because that means between him picking it up,
that's a representation you're making,
that's
perhaps
that you
negligently
checked it. Yeah.
so.
Now the problem is that I don't know if someone handed the armor the gun.
Yeah.
Because if somebody the armor, the AD, if someone handed the AD the gun, like the armor, generally here's the gun, the AD's got it, and the AD's now handed. Now you're talking about, okay, who now he needs to check it, because the way, and this is one thing in this interview that kind of got me confused. The way he's making it seem is only one person, one sole person, whoever that may be, checks the gun, and that gun can be handed to whoever, and that gun is always safe, no matter who handles it. But that's not the way gun safety works. It's supposed to, every person who handles the weapon is supposed to check it for safety. So what they're saying makes absolutely no sense if you're handling fire. Anyone who handles firearms knows that whatever they're saying is not making any sense, because you don't have only one person check the gun and hand it to multiple people. The reason why everybody has to check the gun is to make sure it's safe from hand to hand. And so again, I don't know what he's trying to sell. I don't know who they're trying to save, but right now, the person who I think has the most criminal liability in this whole story is the AD. And that's why we only heard his attorney say something. We haven't heard him say something.
Yeah, agreed. Luna X Nova wants to know, what about New Mexico law of negligence with guns is reckless? So
we've looked at the New Mexico specific law. We think that involuntary manslaughter looks very probable.
Yeah.
For the second reason, obviously. The first reason is because of sudden passion or, and incitement, which is obviously not true. Second reason for involuntary manslaughter, basically careless disregard, whatever the exacting words are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Christopher Schaefer says SAG guidelines indicate that someone can be the delegate in place of the prop master. Industry practices to have them show. Get off the light. You're going to knock it over. Okay.
Yeah, like an assistant prop master, of course. That makes logical sense.
But he just said that he didn't even look. He didn't look at the gun. He didn't check it. He didn't do anything, right? And because it's like the last thing said, it's supposed to show the actor it's clear. But he admits nobody showed him anything. He just handed him a gun. It's like, okay, it's good. Bam. Well, no, it's not good. Oh my God.
Yeah. So Stephen DeMonin says the armor was outside because of COVID.
That's a joke.
Yeah.
Was it? I mean, I saw some of the earlier reporting. I remember seeing something about that there was that COVID guidelines had something to do with the movement of people, and that she was outside.
It'd be interesting if COVID guidelines somehow came into this in some way. That'd be a really interesting twist.
Yeah. No, that would.
Hear this funny story. The parents who just got charged in Michigan.
Yeah. I'm not 100% sold on that one.
No, well, that's great. That's crazy. But the kid, he literally wrote a letter saying he's going to kill everybody that same day. So that morning he writes the letter. He says I'm going to kill people, all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
The teacher sees it. She takes a picture of it. They call the parents. They take him in that morning to the principal's office, and nobody checks his bag or whatever. Then they send him back to the class. But the parents, when the school shooting started, the mom was like, she texted him, "Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it." So she knew that the kid was in trouble. I don't
know if that goes to knowledge as much as I don't know what I don't know. I'm not 100% behind these manslaughter charges for the parents.
Was it a conscious disregard was it a conscious disregard of a threat? That's essentially what they're saying.
How is it for the parents and not for the school officials, though?
I agree. The school officials too. I've been saying the school officials too should be charged.
So how are we charging the parents and not charging the school officials?
Yeah, I agree.
Because the school officials were the one that sent him back to the classroom.
Yeah, you're the ones that have more knowledge. You're the ones that have all the knowledge. It's like, well, we observed all this behavior. We told the parents. We got the letter. We made a photo. We told the parents. We reported it all. It's like, okay, that's a lot of knowledge that you guys have. Why didn't you guys take action?
But listen to this though. This is the kicker. If the kid was sick with a fever or coughing, they would have sent him home. But him writing a letter saying he's going to kill everybody, they send him back to class. That shows you how twisted it is now, right?
Yeah, there's definitely
send him home. And I'm going to kill everybody.
Some liability for the school district there for wrongful deaths for sure. I mean, at the very least, I mean, but yeah, some criminal charges. If they're charging the parents, it would make sense to charge some school administrators that were involved in that decision making as well.
Yeah. I definitely charge the school people.
Yeah.
Teacher and principal got to go to jail, man.
Oh, man. Well, anyhow, that for me about does it. So no more super chats, guys, because I don't want to have to keep extending this, but this has been wonderful. Thank you so much to my great guests for joining me for over 3 hours now. This has been great. And also thanks to my big brother, Andy, for joining us earlier and goofing around and showing his Christmas spirit in his elf costume. So that was a great introduction to the channel. So anyhow, guys, just in case it somehow has slipped the viewers' attention where they can find you, why don't you let them know?
I'm at Uncivil Law. It's the best channel on LawTube. And you can come there for all the best legal cases and deep dive legal analysis. This past Friday, we did oral react to the Supreme Court Mississippi abortion case, and it was really, really good oral argument, at least for my money. I thought all three attorneys were really, really good. We just did a release on QAnon Shaman Guy, teaches us the finer points of how plea deals work. So we learned through the misfortune of QAnon Shaman Guy. And we also do a lot of pulp culture stuff over there with, for example, we did the one with, what's her name? Haley Page Gutman selling her name to JLM and it not working out well for her. So we try to do a variety of legal topics. So Uncivil Law, check me out.
Yeah. How about you, Nate? Oh, you're muted.
You're muted.
You're muted, Nate.
Yeah, no, I like how the gun down. I'm like,
yeah,
perfect. Alec Baldwin. Type in Nate the Lawyer. My channel, we all do law stuff. So if you my stuff is just, I like to surprise people with crazy stuff. So you go to my channel, you'll click on a video and you'll probably be surprised at what you hear. So, if you like that type of stuff, check me out. And, it's
when are we doing the soccer video collab, man?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, well, two things. One, the soccer stuff has just been gold. But you know what? I'm trying. I don't want to be pigeoned into the whole. I'm the U.S. soccer. I don't have. I like one.
It's your niche. You have to just accept this. It's what you're put here to do.
Yeah.
So just
gotta dance with the fellow that brought you, right?
Yeah. No, the other video just went over 1 million views today. So U.S. soccer, women's soccer just is killing it. But yeah. So we'll definitely, and you'll see all these guys. They've done U.S. soccer videos with me. But yeah. So what I do is I explain the law. I do great PowerPoints, and people love it. So check it out. We'll see. And I will also say one thing about my channel. You're going to see in the comments, Nate is a crazy BLM activist on one video. And then on the next video, you're going to say Nate is a white supremacist. So that shows you the variety of why people hate me. But the one thing they won't say is that I'm wrong. Because I've been telling people for the last 2 years, don't judge me on the ones I get right. Judge me on the ones I get wrong.
Yeah, there you go. and then on Twitter there'll be people that say that you're a liar, but don't say what you're lying about.
Yeah, that's just a liar. Okay, yeah.
So, all right, well, that about does it. If you are new here, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you want to support the channel, you can support us on Locals Patreon or through YouTube memberships. I saw that some people became members today. Thank you so much. All the links are in the description below. And of course, there is lovely, lovely merch, which I have started to sell, especially since the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. You can get some great quotes like "Hocus Pocus out of focus," "Don't get brazen with me," and more. And then otherwise, if for some reason you have just come in at the end and you're not able to see the entire live stream, there will be clips uploaded to a new clips channel, which I have just started. So be sure to go over there and subscribe so that you can check out some shorter clips that are taken out of all of these live streams. So we're going to start populating that channel more and more as we continue to live stream and whatnot. So anyhow, that about does it. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today, and happy Sunday, and have a great start to your week. See you guys.